Hey, Yaman, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. Hey, I want to float a possible settlement of Elon's compensation case past you.
Mhm.
Been spending the last couple weeks going through the decision by the Delaware court. I've been doing a deep dive, going through the footnotes, pulling cases, seeing what the lay of the land is down there in Delaware. And I think I've come up with a win-win-win for everybody. All grounded on Delaware law and in the what I think the judge would like to see. Now, the big obstacle to this plan would be, of course, Elon, because it involves the settlement. And we all know Elon doesn't like to settle. Well, unless you give him enough incentive to settle, it's not going to happen. So the win for Elon is that he gets his compensation paid in full. All 12 trenches, 55 billion paid. The win for the shareholders is they're going to get paid via a stock buyback. The win for the attorneys are that they're going to get paid through the common fund that's going to be agreed to between Tesla and the plaintiff. Now, the problem is there, how much is going to go into the common fund? The common fund is going to be made up of the difference between what Elon agreed to or the value of the tranches at the time of the grant, which was $2.6 million or $2.6 billion. Sorry about that. B is in boy, billion. What the common fund is going to do is put half of that 2.6 or 1.3 into the common fund. So Tesla will come out of pocket $1.3 billion. Of that $1.3 billion, according to Delaware law, of how plaintiff attorneys are compensated, they will get 33% of that $1.3 billion for an all in settlement, meaning they will get roughly $429 million. That will be the highest award ever given, or attorney fee award ever given in Delaware. It will rank number 6 nationally. So it appeals to their pocketbook and appeals to their egos, which we all know, myself included, may at times have a little bit of an inflated ego. The shareholders will get the difference of the 429 million and the 1.3, which equals roughly $871 million for a stock buyback. I think the judge will approve it because she put Tesla and the plaintiff back into 2018 to negotiate. So what it does is basically cuts Elon's compensation in half, i.e., makes it fair, which is what she wanted. She couldn't create the common fund because the defense, Elon's attorneys, never argued what would have been fair. Why wouldn't they have argued what would have been fair? Because that kind of goes against their case, because their whole case was based on the fact that the 12 tranches were fair. But the judge didn't agree. So the judge, what she did was follow precedent set by the Delaware Supreme Court in other cases of saying rescission was the proper remedy for this type of situation. So since she put them back into 2018, they have to use 2018 dollars, not 2024 dollars or the 55 billion. Even if they paid Elon the 55 billion and she rescinded it, she still admitted that Elon needs to get paid some amount. So that's why we're using, or I'm using, the 2.6 billion that was the grant price back in 2018 for those 12 tranches. I think everybody wins, and the judge has no choice but to approve it. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I mean, I can't really follow all of that. It's not my area of expertise, but so you said the shareholders' incentive is the $800 million buyback. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, but so but eventually, like right now, the way shareholders are sitting is, there was the essential tens of billions of dollars buyback, right? Because those options would get. Um, so why would they agree to giving tens of billions of dollars at this point? The only way you can pitch that to shareholders is, if you don't give it, then Elon will walk, kind of thing, right?
Well, the shareholders voted to give Elon the 12 tranches in the first place. So why would they balk at it?
Right, but that wasn't enough for the judge. So why is the 26 billion fair if not the 55 billion?
The 2.6 billion isn't fair, but this is a settlement.
Mm-hmm.
And what do the attorneys want? The attorneys asked for, the plaintiff's attorneys asked for rescission. That's what the judge gave them. So instead of, if we go back to 2018, the grant option price was 2.6 billion. You're now cutting that to in theory, to 1.3 billion, and you're putting that into a common fund, i.e., a pool of money that can be used to pay the plaintiff's attorneys and the shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
And theoretically, cutting Elon's pay in half. Even though at the end, since this is a settlement, and Tesla has 29 billion in cash sitting there, all they have to do is cut 1.3 billion out of that cash to pay the attorneys and the shareholders, and the shareholders are getting 800 million back out of that 1.3 in the share buyback.
All right, well, so you just send this to the board and you're waiting for. So what's your question for me?
Well, I'm just thinking it through right now, seeing if anybody else out there sees any downfalls. Now, there are some pitfalls that can be worked through, but that would be the general structure of a settlement that I think Tesla should be looking at. And I think Tesla's lawyers are smart enough to see what I'm seeing in reading all these cases and how she wrote her opinion to basically mirror the opinion that was given in the Solar City line of cases that the judge was kind of mocking. Does that make sense? I guess is a ultimate question.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the judge argued that tens of billions of dollars is not enough, you're focused on 2.6 billion. I'm not sure why, because Elon essentially got paid tens of billions of dollars, right? That was the pay.
Only because the stock ran up. The
Right.
value of the stock grant in 2008 was 2.6 billion.
Mm-hmm.
It was up to him, and through his efforts, if meeting those goals, those tranches, would cause the value of the company to rise, which in turn would raise the value of the share price. But the share price at the time of the agreement was the share value or the grant option price was $2.6 billion.
Mhm.
That's all it cost. See, this is where one of the downfalls is. Theoretically, that's what it would cost Tesla to fulfill their obligation at the time of the grant, 2.6 billion.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I don't think it's going to satisfy the judge.
I don't think she has a choice because she put both sides back into 2018. They have to negotiate as if it was 2018.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't, they shouldn't have the ability to use force, or, be able to look back and see what actually happened. You have to negotiate as if it was 2018. You don't know what's going to happen. If Elon doesn't perform, he gets nothing. You can't play Back to the Future, like Biff did in those movies and had the sports almanac in his back pocket and go back and start betting on the sports game because you know the outcome. You can't negotiate like that.
Mm-hmm.
She rescinded the deal, put the parties back. Therefore, you use 2018 dollars. You don't know the outcome. It's either he works for it and the value of the shares increases, which is on him, or he doesn't work for it and the share price declines and he gets nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the primary difference between how you're seeing it and how the judge is seeing it is that it's up to Elon, or it's solely due to Elon, or mostly due to Elon, that the stock price or the market cap went from 50 billion to 500 billion. You believe that is the case. I know a lot of investors do, and it might be, right? But that's not the way the judge sees it. The judge sees it as this is a company where, in 2018, we're talking tens of thousands of employees. Today, more than 100,000 employees. And it's not due to one person. That's the way judge is seeing it.
I understand what you're saying, but I would tend to disagree with that
Mm-hmm.
because she used the language in her judgment that he basically put it on FSD and just sat back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true.
That's not true. Yeah.
She has a warped view of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So if she's going to put them back to 2018, then she has to accept negotiating as if it was 2018, not knowing what the results of the deal is going to be. And if it was so easy in her view, then okay, you cut his $2.6 billion grant in half to 1.3. So I don't know why she would object to that. Now, she's also on record through other cases as saying she doesn't like attorneys making gross amounts of money.
Mm.
And she has the ability to raise or lower the award. So if you're going to say it's tens of billions of dollars, then giving a potential 33% award to the plaintiff's attorneys would be just fees that, I mean, nobody's earned those fees. No attorneys ever earned those fees in history.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't work.
Right.
You know, the highest award was what, roughly $600 million in a class action. You're
Yeah.
not going to say they get 30% of $10 billion or $3 billion. That's just grossly out of line.
Yeah.
If they create the settlement fund, then they can apply Delaware law to that settlement fund still creating a big award for the attorneys, but keeping it in line with what's been awarded prior.
Yeah.
Now, those numbers can be played with a little bit. Obviously, if you're a Tesla, you're not going, and that's what I propose is what they would ultimately pay, but you're going to negotiate from a lower position and end up at my position at the worst. But looking at it, when everybody's out there saying, oh, they're going to get 30% of 55 billion, no. Even the judge said no, because Elon still deserves to be paid. What he deserves to be paid is a question mark.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right.
So somebody has to come up with a logical basis of what it is to be paid. And I think doing this type of settlement is a logical basis and one that follows Delaware law. And everybody gets something. And we all can move on, as opposed to waiting another year and a half for this thing to get a Delaware Supreme Court decision, which I think there's less than a 50-50 chance that Elon wins.
Really? So let's go down that road, and then what happens? Let's say Elon lost, and then what?
Elon loses his appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has to value Elon's labor. Who's it going to be?
Yeah.
You're still in that same position of valuing his labor. You're going to have to negotiate something. So here we've negotiated it. 1.3 billion is the damage in 2018 dollars. And that's the negotiation that's going on now as we sit here and talk tonight, because via the judge's decision, the parties have to present a final order for her to sign. So they're in negotiations right now as to what those attorneys' fees should be. This is directly from the opinion. The parties are to confer on a form of final order implementing this decision and submit a joint letter identifying all issues, including fees. Well, one issue is, how do you value Elon's contributions? The man deserves to get paid, and she said as much.
Mm-hmm.
And then you base that on the value he conferred. If you go back to his 2012 tranches, you're really not that far off. I mean, you're not 130 times greater than the next level of CEO compensation that she talked about. You're only at 65 times. Well, the man does deserve to get a raise, right? Everybody likes a raise every year. He did hit some outrageous goals, which now you're going to hopefully bring in some experts and saying those goals weren't realistic, or they took a Herculean effort to do. That's why you're saying he gets 65 times more than he got in 2012, but you're still cutting it down. And that's all theory, because you're doing a settlement. You're not asking the court to make a decision of valuing his efforts. You're leaving it to the parties to decide that. And the shareholders already proved it. Now you can throw in there on this settlement that it would involve a shareholder, a majority of the minority agreeing with the settlement, And everybody's now knows that Elon controlled the board. And if the shareholders don't approve it, then you got to go back to the drawing board and negotiate again. If the shareholders approve it, now you have what theoretically cleanses the controlled board, because you have an informed shareholder group now saying yes, as opposed to before, according to the court. I'm going to use a word here. You had a disenfranchised shareholder group approving it. Now you have an enfranchised shareholder group approving it, which is what the judge wants.
I understand. Thank you for explaining. David Katz is coming up. Let's see what he has to say.
Sure.
Do you see David as a speaker?
I do not.
Okay. Maybe there's a connection issue. The disenfranchised, enfranchised shareholder base, that's not the primary issue, right? It's one of the issues that she talked about, but that's not the primary one. The primary one is whether Elon would have walked away. So is that the minimum that the board could have paid Elon to keep him and incentivized, right?
Under the entire fairness doctrine, you need price and process. She found that the price was not reasonable and the process wasn't reasonable.
Yeah, so if there's a vote that, the process, obviously, like you said, would be cleansed, but would the price, do you think that's the minimum that the board can negotiate with Elon to keep him and incentivized? Like, I think that's the kind of sticking issue, right?
Well, for the settlement, he's getting the full 55 billion. He's getting his full 12 tranches.
Right.
This is a settlement.
But that's what I'm saying, though.
Negotiated.
Okay.
And there's precedence for this in Delaware under a Dell computer case in 2023. So
Okay.
it's not novel.
So you think this would satisfy the judge?
I think it would.
Okay.
I don't think she'd have much of a choice, because you're correcting the pitfalls that she pointed out, and you're letting her crow a little bit that her quote unquote, put Elon in his place, even though he's still technically getting his 12 tranches. She can point to the pieces of paper saying, yeah, I did that.
Right. I wish that Elon came out and said something like, you know what would really help, in my opinion? And obviously, this topic way, like literally a million times more than I have followed it. Okay. But I think what would really help if Elon came out and said something like instead of threatening that he might leave, like literally put in numbers. Okay, this is what I need for SpaceX, Neuralink, Boring Company. And if I can't get that from my competition at Tesla, then I have no choice but to pursue another route. I think if he said that, so the lawyers could use that as basis. Okay, like this is why the judge, you need to agree to this, because he's literally going to walk away if he doesn't get this number, and he communicated as much. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Makes total sense. Problem was, he didn't testify to that in 2018.
Oh, I see. What did you say?
He said he was going to stay at Tesla
Yeah,
no matter what.
right. There you go. Yeah.
So he kind of didn't do himself any favors. Be harsh about it. He kind of screwed himself there.
Well, he was being honest, right? I mean, that's exactly what I thought as well. Like he would have said, or he would have thought, because that's the Elon that everybody loves. By the way, you see what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
But having been in the law business for 30 years, sometimes honesty
right,
doesn't pay.
exactly. But I think it can be fixed going forward, even with that. Don't you think? Like, if he comes out and puts those numbers, because we're negotiating now, right? So if he comes out and puts those numbers in paper, then it might help, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And somebody has had to have put a number to paper already,
Mhm.
because I think they got an extension on when they need to submit the final order. So, yeah, they need to work through it. But at this point in time, the plaintiff doesn't have really any incentive except, how much are you going to pay me?
Mhm.
There's no aggrieved plaintiff here. The court dismissed all the plaintiff's personal damage claims.
Mhm.
So they're
So
really
when you say
arguing.
plaintiff, you're talking about the lawyers, right?
No, I'm talking about the actual dude with 9 shares.
I mean, how much can you possibly be entitled to?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know what their contract paid, because in class actions, the lawyers go after professional plaintiffs and they agree to pay them a base fee, and maybe they get a bump if they collect something, from the actual litigation.
Mm.
But and it's going to be minimal. It might be, I mean, in the Dell case, the actual named plaintiff got $50,000 that was approved by the court. And that was $1 billion settlement, the largest
Mhm.
settlement to date in the Delaware court. The named
So
plaintiff
even
got,
even if this guy gets like $1 million or millions of dollars, right? And the lawyers get hundreds of millions of dollars, neither make it to the top priority list, in my opinion. It's really about keeping Elon at Tesla, satisfying the judge that this is fair, and the only way you're going to do that is if Elon indicates that look, this money is required for something he's trying to do. Otherwise, he's going to have to pursue some other way.
for the next round of the compensation negotiation, yes, he's going to have to do that. But
Right.
he already testified what he wanted in 2018, and that wasn't it.
Right. Exactly. So then that's the way it might have to be then.
Right.
Bulk it into the next package.
Correct. To work it into the next package, he's going to have to threaten to leave.
Mhm.
But you're going to have an enfranchised shareholder group voting to approve that compensation package.
Mhm.
So
I
if
mean, don't you think that would get passed?
knowing what we know now, and knowing the disclosure they have to put in the proxy statement, you put everything in plus the kitchen sink, saying that this is a one-way, this was brought up by Elon, this is what Elon's proposed, we agree with it, but hey, we didn't put up much resistance to it because we know Elon, and then list out your reasons 1, 2, and 3. And in those reasons was he's either going to get his money or he's going to take his AI and go home.
I don't think he can take. Like I agree with Omar on that
No,
front. I
I'm
don't think
saying
he
he
can
takes
take
his
it. Yeah.
ball and goes home. To go
Right.
back to a
Right.
sportsman, he leaves the
Right.
playground unless he gets his money.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But if in the meantime, if you've moved the corporation out of Delaware into another state, Texas, Nevada, and I prefer Nevada over Texas, you can create that second class of shares with super voting powers. So now he's getting what he really wants is control and not so much the money. Now everybody knows that he controls that company. It's a conflicted board, and your disclosures are much cleaner, and you have an enfranchised shareholder basis making the vote.
Mhm. Meta, do you think Elon, how would it play out? Let's say, for example, if he couldn't negotiate a deal that he likes for the 2018 comp package, and the shareholders voted to roll it into the future compensation, just to be fair to him, but not 100% fair because he already put in the work for that money.
Couldn't they just vote on a bonus?
Do you think he would take that deal?
Yeah, they could give him a bonus, which would be a share allocation as a bonus, and say, for the stellar work you
Can
did.
you hear Meta?
Yes.
I can't. Okay, I'll be right back. Hold on.
Nice to meet you, Ken. It was nice to listen to the legal side of things.
It's nice to meet you too, Matt. I've heard a lot from you through the past year or so I've been on this board. I guess my question to you would be, this bonus would be in lieu of compensation, or would there be some sort of
Okay,
compensation plus bonus?
let's see if this
I,
works. All right,
I'm
go ahead.
I'm not a lawyer, so you can tell me if this is valid. But I would assume when you give somebody a bonus, there's nothing in the law that says it can only be cash. So they could instead give him options as a bonus. Now the cost basis would get stepped up, so maybe it has to be stock instead. So he takes a tax hit effectively.
Gotcha.
Yes, but he still needs to get paid for the 2018 package.
Right. They could literally settle on that being $1 or whatever the dollar amount they want and subtract that from the remainder of the bonus.
How did the lawyers get paid?
They don't. Right?
Right.
Why does Elon care about the lawyers getting paid? They could literally say, you're right. I said I was willing to work there no matter what. So they'll give me $1, whatever the legal minimum wage is, and you can have a percentage of that.
Yeah.
I mean, why should the lawyers be paid based on his compensation? It doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make sense that they should get paid based on how much money they save the shareholders, because then you're just setting a precedent for everybody to go sue high paid folks, period. Can you hear Yaman?
Yeah, I'm not talking. I mean, I guess what Ken's saying is that if the plaintiff lawyers don't get paid, then they're not going to settle. Is that what you're saying, Ken?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I muted myself, unfortunately. There's a whole line of cases in Delaware that deal with this type of situation, and they're called mootness cases. When a company, usually they happen in mergers and acquisitions cases, where the company failed to disclose, like here, there's a failure to disclose, and the damages tend to be nominal. So lawyers get paid very little. So is the court going to be looking for that? I don't think so, based on what the court has written in her opinion. She would have awarded damages if Elon would have put on evidence of what was a fair compensation package.
How do you define fair? Based on what others are being paid, based on what he would have taken as a minimum, based on what value he brought for the company? It's just so nebulous.
That's the $55 billion question. But in her mind, there was no arm's length negotiation between the board and Elon. So she was looking for some sort of arm's length negotiation where they would have pushed back on him, maybe hired an independent compensation expert or experts to determine what compensation should have been offered.
Did they not hire? Wow, they didn't hire experts,
No,
independent. Okay.
no.
And you also had the two shareholder. I think he called them ISIS. Say, um, this is not fair. Well, I mean, I guess Meta. I think it is the minimum that you can't get away with, keeping the person, right? And he said already that he would have stayed either way. How do you argue against that? That's fair. That's not fair.
So there's a difference between fair and extracting maximal value, right? So if you look at an employee and they're working for a company and then later on they get a mortgage, they have kids, they've been working for the company for 8 or 9 years, you could turn around and say, you know what? If we paid this person 20% less, they're so indebted, they've been here so long, they don't, they're close to retirement, they don't really have many other options. For the company's benefit, we're going to reduce the salary of these employees. That's the precedent you're effectively setting. Granted, it's only for the CEO, but you're basically setting a precedent that the shareholder value is to extract as much and pay as little as you can to the employees, as if the amount you pay the employees doesn't impact their overall work.
Well, there's a difference, right? First of all, if you do that as a company, then your entire employee base is going to be put on notice, basically, and they're going to be looking for jobs. So you can't really do that in that scenario, right?
Right.
The-
Fair. I
the-
mean, the value of something is only what a willing buyer will pay a willing seller.
Exactly.
Elon is selling his services to Tesla, which, by the way, there was nothing put on what his services really would be, how many hours, would be spent at Tesla. Like, so when you hire a CEO, the CEO is only dealing with that company. Here, the deal was Elon can go in and out as he pleases.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
he's the odd duck out of the quote unquote normal CEO. So how do you compensate that? Don't know.
Yeah, I think I mean, the only way I can think of is if I think the way it's going to happen is I don't think he's going to get his money back. Okay. And I think that it's going to be up to shareholders to roll it into his future plan. And he can say something like, here's what I need. Um, whether it's to control.
We lost him on again.
I'll just give him a minute.
I just like to picture him walking outside talking right now. And
Can you
then,
hear me now?
oh, I can, yeah, exactly. Like he might be asking a question, waiting to hear an answer, or is he just talking, thinking we're listening?
Yeah. Says the host is having connection issues. Please stand by.
Yeah, I wonder for the spaces, because if the host disappears, they kill the whole space. I wonder if they hang the space off the host's name. And that's why when Elon was hosting, the whole thing would break.
Yeah, not sure about that. So not my area of expertise. That's why I'm here listening to you guys. I do have a question for you that's not related to the compensation case. I'd like to ask you sometime.
Depending on how long Yaman is gone, you may ask. Wait, Yaman did a mute unmute. Are you back?
Yeah, did you guys hear
Oh.
what I was saying?
No, we were picturing what you were talking about, and if you're asking questions or if you're just talking because you disconnected in the middle.
Yeah, so I think the likely outcome is that I don't think he's going to get his prior compensation back. Okay, the way it is, because he already said he would have stayed no matter what, and that's gives judge everything she needs and the plaintiff that he needs to say, well, okay, then you get the minimum. So now going forward, maybe negotiation can be better with better disclosures, whatever disclosure. I didn't think that disclosure issue was a big deal, but I think it's more about what does the board need to pay him to get the services that he provides. So he needs to better lay out, this is the minimum I need.
You don't think he can go to the what is it, the Chancellery Court or there's the court above where they are, do an
Delaware
appeal?
Supreme Court.
No, I don't think it's Supreme Court. I think there's another name.
No, it's
Or no,
the Supreme Court.
yeah, sorry,
I
it's
don't know,
Delaware.
like how do you think appeal is going to overturn this? Because he already said he would have stayed no matter what.
Right, but the difference is this. The board has to present what is a fair compensation plan, and he says he would stay no matter what. There's all these other things at play. When the compensation plan was discussed in the press at that time, there's clear indication that it feels like an impossibly hard plan to achieve. So when the voters voted on it, one could argue that they didn't actually think the whole thing would be achieved. And if it did get achieved, they were okay with it. So the question shouldn't be, did the board do the right thing? The question should be, was the board biased? And if the board was not biased, based on like the shareholders, knowledge, all the discussion that happened outside, if the board was not biased, then it doesn't matter what he said. They negotiated, they took all that information in, they adapted to the fact that they know Elon and they know the way he speaks, and they know that he might be more motivated by money than he lets on at times.
But that's not what the judge said in her opinion. She said the board was biased. In fact, they were collegial in
Right,
their
but that's
negotiations. It
that's the
was
thing that
as
can
if
be appealed, right?
that's okay. When you're doing an appeal, you can only appeal points of law, and based on the history of the cases that I've read, I don't think he's going to overturn the law. What you're talking about is overturning the facts used by the judge to support her legal opinion. That's the hardest thing to overturn on appeal. Most appeals, 95% of appeals lose. So
What
you're trying to get into that 5%. So you're going to have to show that it was very unreasonable for the judge to rely on these facts to support her finding of the law, because she's the fact finder and she's the legal ruler. She's both the judge and the jury. You only get maybe 0.1% of jury verdicts overturned because the courts, the appeals courts, give huge deference to somebody who's interpreting the facts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to find, there was this court case, it's Coster v. UIP. I'm trying to find it, see if I can send it to you, but it was, if I recall correctly, it was basically um, the Delaware court overruled the Chancellery Court, and one of the statements they made was you can't. The number one thing that they must protect is to not disenfranchise shareholders. And so,
Correct.
wouldn't that
Yes.
precedent hold?
Yes, but she found that the shareholders weren't enfranchised because they weren't properly given the facts of the negotiation by the board. The fact that the board was so conflicted and that there was no negotiation, in essence, by the board with Elon, and that the quote unquote independent directors really weren't quote unquote independent. So they could never have been enfranchised in the first place because they were given misleading information so bad by the board that they weren't enfranchised.
Right. So everything you just described, they couldn't. It has nothing to do with Elon saying he would have worked for nothing.
No, that's on price. Correct.
Okay. So then they can't appeal that, you don't think?
They
Or you just think they have a low chance?
they have a very low chance. They can appeal anything they want. I think it's very low. It's less than 50-50 that he would win. Way less.
That makes me sad for the court system, but I guess the question is then basically, doesn't that set a precedent that everybody who has a company, you must have people on the board that are almost combative?
Well, yeah.
But you know what? You really don't, because if you look at the Solar City line of cases, which the judge said so adroitly sidestepped the issue of overturning the purchase of Solar City, that wasn't very combative. But what did happen is the board hired experts to do their own independent evaluation of Solar City. So there was due diligence and there was some resemblance, and they did push back on price. So there was some resemblance of an arm's length transaction, even though the court found that the board, just like here, was conflicted.
All right. So follow-up question. The
Sure.
process by which the CEO compensation is decided by the board, is that process the same at every company, or is that process itself decided by shareholders?
The process is decided by the board. That's why they set up compensation committees.
And the board is elected by shareholders.
The board is elected by shareholders. That's correct.
Right. So isn't this again, disenfranchising the shareholders by saying you voted for independent board members who are not really independent? You're so dumb you don't realize it.
I guess you can look at it that way, but I don't necessarily agree with it. I like to think the shareholders are a little bit smarter than that.
Yeah, I was being hyperbolic to make
No,
the claim.
I know
Yeah.
you are. I know. Yeah, but
So
yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
basically saying like it feels to me like unless there's fraud, which it doesn't seem like the claim here is fraud. The claim here is they weren't as open about it as they could be. Like what if instead they said, "Hey,
Correct.
you know what? We'll let the shareholders decide if the compensation should be overturned," with the knowledge that Elon might leave. There's no way that the compensation gets overturned.
And you've made full disclosures of everything, and the full disclosure is what makes is what enfranchises the shareholders to then give a enfranchised an informed vote that would wash away the fact that the board is so conflicted in this scenario.
So couldn't they just vote on like reaffirming the previous vote with the new knowledge?
You'd have to put it in at this. No, it's too late for that. You would have to do a settlement with the plaintiff. You'd have to come up with some sort of terms with the plaintiff to settle the case, and you could make the settlement based on a vote of the shareholders.
What happens if the plaintiff is unreasonable and they don't want to settle? Doesn't the judge get involved and force the settlement anyway sometimes?
Well, not at this stage. I mean, I've been there. We're going to in front of the court for the various hearings or meetings and all sorts of stuff. And the judge will say things to try to move along, give you an idea of what their rulings may be, so it forces the parties to settle. The judges like when parties settle it out themselves. And you're in that position right now because you have to draft an order with the plaintiff saying what the issues are and what the attorney's fees are going to be in that order. And then she's going to enter her final judgment.
Right.
She's
So
going
let's say you go and you say, okay, what are the reasonable hourly wages for these attorneys plus
yep.
some risk adjustment? So they're not going to get billions of dollars, right? You allow the attorneys to hang themselves on asking for too much, but you say, okay, we're going to give some reasonable attorneys' fees. We're going to give a reasonable compensation for your 6 or 9 shares, however many shares that person has, and we're going to reaffirm the vote. And that is the offer we're going to stand by and make. And they just hold their guns to that line. The plaintiffs ask for too much money. They go back and forth a few times. Eventually, they have to go to the judge. Now, the judge can either say, I don't think reaffirming the vote, even after the shareholders know everything and it's made public, is possible. We must overturn it. There's no other way out. Or the judge could say, you need to pay the attorneys a little bit more or something along those lines, but then yes, you can go ahead and do the vote again, right? So at that point, it's okay, fine. These lawyers get paid a little bit of money out of his pockets, and it's like it's a fine for not having disclosed everything to the judge's liking, even though it's post factual.
You can pay the attorneys out of pocket. That's called paying separately, but it's not going to be nominal.
Right, but that's where
Delaware doesn't use what you said. What you said basically is called a lodestar calculation in the legal world, where you submit what your hourly billings would have been plus your out of pockets, and then the court looks at that and they apply a multiplication factor to that, and that's what you're awarded. Delaware despises that process. They've set it up through their line of cases, through American Mining and Sugarland, to set what fees would be in this type of situation. And that fee is based on the value the plaintiff attorney created, the value for the shareholders and the plaintiff. So if you're going to say that Elon gets $1 a year or minimum wage, $15 an hour, right? That's going to save Tesla potentially $2 billion. Then they would get a fee, which at this stage of the game, you're looking at max fee, either 33% or 25% of $2 billion.
What if the contingency is that they have a vote, and if the shareholders reaffirm it, then obviously it didn't save the shareholders any money?
The court can still impose out of pocket percentage.
Even though the overall vote, so like you're basically saying, like, what is the amount? So at that point, then it's like, okay, fine, they could force the court to figure out what's fair Elon compensation. Let's say they settle at 10 or 20 billion, then they only receive a percentage of the remaining 30 billion. Is that what you're saying?
Not at this stage, because she rescinded the deal. So she put the parties back into the position they were in 2018. So in 2018, he had no compensation package. They agreed to something to the grant options that were valued at that point in time at 2.6 million. So you're dealing, to me, or not 2.6 billion. So to me, this is what I would argue on Elon's point. The damages aren't off of the 55 billion, the ultimate value of the grant option, but it's the value of the grant option at the time of the grant. You don't get to look back, use hindsight to calculate your damages. If
Agreed,
you're gonna,
agreed,
if you're
because
good,
he didn't exercise the options. Yeah.
well, no, he was awarded them and he earned them.
No, but he didn't exercise them. In order to exercise them, he'd actually have to pay a certain amount of money to turn them into shares, right?
No, he has them. It's his choice whether he wants to option them or
No,
not.
But
He,
let's say he just let the options expire. Theoretically, that would not have cost Tesla 55 billion then. So it's I guess what I'm trying to say is it should be the cost of the share the options at the time that it was granted to him, not at the time of vesting.
correct, at the time that it was granted to him, whether or not he had the right, the option, the tranches were set up, and the value, the way I understand it anyway, is that the value of those options were $2.6 billion at the beginning of his compensation package. On day one, that was what the value was.
That's the total value, but you still have to subtract out the share price because the option means you still have to purchase it at the original strike price, right? It's not like the strike price is set to zero. So it'd be less than 2.6 billion, and they would only get 25 to 33% of that. It's still like hundreds of millions of dollars in
No,
fines.
actually, it would be more
Oh, why is that?
because they used a Monte Carlo option, a Monte Carlo scheme, and this is where I'm a little fuzzy on because I don't get into this line very often, if at all. But at the time of the grant, they set it up on their Monte Carlo scenario, and that value was 2.6. The actual share, I have it written down here too, and I am trying to find it. The actual shares was $7 billion. Hang on. Here we go. The option exercise price was $350.02. Okay, so this is before the splits. Okay. As of the grant date under the Monte Carlo scenario, it was valued at 2.6 billion.
Right. So you take the difference of those two,
Well, hang on.
right?
It involved 20,264,000 42 shares that had a price of 7.1 billion. And this is where I'd let my NBA CPA friends come in and figure that part out.
Right. So I was trying to make the claim that the difference between those two numbers is the cost to the company at each of the tranches when they issue the shares, right? Because the companies are going to issue the shares preemptively. So as the price goes up and they issue the shares, the effective price is going to be higher because they've set it at a higher market cap, right? So the 7.6 billion is the total cost, but at grant it only costs them 2.6, or sorry, he has to pay 2.6 to the company in order to acquire that 7. So it's closer to what, 5 billion, right? We're splitting hairs at this point.
Yeah, the spread is 5 billion.
Okay. So, and then on that 5 billion, they would have to make a claim of how much they would have actually paid Elon for the 6 years of work, which I think you could argue would be maybe close to 5 billion. And then what's left for the lawyers after that?
Well, the judge thinks it's too much. So whatever on your scenario, whatever under 5 billion they paid would be shareholder value created by the plaintiff.
Correct. So let's say they negotiated Elon getting paid 4 billion instead of 5 billion.
Mhm.
Fine. Then the lawyers get 25 to 33% of that remaining billion. Not ideal. Obviously sucks. Elon would have to pay that out of pocket. And then the shareholders could vote to reaffirm the original thing. Is that correct?
You can do it that way if you want to hinge it on a shareholder vote. I don't know if you came in the beginning, but I originally proposed a $1.3 billion settlement.
I didn't hear
So
that.
yeah, so we're basically saying the same thing. So here's I think what you missed. I proposed 1.3 billion settlement. Elon gets his full compensation package, the whole 55 billion. The lawyers get 429 million. The shareholders get 871 million, which they get through to use for a share buyback.
Yeah, that sounds good. Like, I think just make it go away, and then in the future, like, dump every possible relationship you have with everybody in your disclosures and just overwhelm people.
And that's a strategy too. And the lawyers get paid, plus they get the ego stroke of being the highest earning attorneys in Delaware court and number 6 nationally. So you got something for your website. It's a marketing material. And the shareholders get paid with an $871 million buyback. Everybody wins. It's a win-win-win. Now, what does it cost Tesla? It costs them $1.3 billion, which they can take out of their $29 billion cash pile.
But Elon still gets his 55 billion, right?
But Elon still gets his $55 billion, and we move on to the next compensation
And he
package
could also
negotiation.
reimburse the company if he chose to reimburse the
Correct.
1.3. Yeah.
Yes. And you're saving yourself a year and a half.
Do you have anything else you want to talk about on this topic, Iman?
We have Xander coming up, and if Omar has anything to say, we can. But before that, I apologize for snapping earlier. Lots of stress these days. So just to Omar and Meta, I'm sorry. Although,
That's all right. You don't have to apologize.
yeah,
I know you're just trying to
I
keep
concur.
the
that's okay.
quality of the
I think,
space high.
well, there's that, but also more importantly, in this, it's definitely. I mean, no, I mean, I can't move the time of the space if we should do that. But I know a lot of people eat lunch during this space, and I obviously don't want people not eating lunch. But we can't. If we have to push it back an hour, that's totally fine.
I think just you don't have to go by my schedule, but evenings are easier, and I know evenings are hard for walk mode. So maybe I'll just see which spaces I can attend, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, we'll talk about it on the speaker DM. Xander, hold on. Before that, let Machine get it out. Machine, go ahead.
I mean, I know I was gone for one day, but really, you really went over the top. I see these messages about ranting about people chewing in your space and some Zapruder-like conspiracy that it wasn't chewing, but it's some audio defect. And this is what happens when I'm not around. It really goes off the rails, and why you guys need me. And not Xander. Xander can go away.
The real issue is that we weren't eating Popeyes.
Xander.
I guess I'm just gonna go away.
What do you have to say on the compensation issue?
So I have a question for Ken. Um, it seems like, with all due respect to all attorneys, my best friend is a patent attorney. Like, do all attorneys just stick together? It seems like this is one of those areas where Tesla and shareholders are harmed by such a judgment, and this should be taken all the way. Is that really the best course of action? And I missed most of it. I just came in about 5 minutes ago. Is this really the best course of action? Is to pay whatever from 29 billion that Tesla has?
In my opinion, it's always better to settle than it is to leave your fate in a judge's or jury's hands.
Not in Elon's opinion.
Correct. And that's going to be a sticking point to the plan. But if you show him he's going to get his whole 12 tranches, I think he can come around, because if he loses, I mean, they're negotiating now, and the judge enters that judgment, what are you going to do? Even the judge agrees he needs to be paid. So are you going to force the judge to make that decision? Or would you rather take your $55 billion, have Tesla pay the 1.3, the shareholders get 800 million, and the attorneys get 400 million? So what does that 55 billion really cost you? Not much.
I think if you look at it from the other perspective, when you cave, then more people are going to sue because they think there's a chance to cave. And if you're
Happens all the time.
yeah, and if you're Elon, you could look at it like, well, they think that I would have worked for free. I'm sure these people would settle for 1.2 billion, maybe even 1.1, maybe even 1. What's the lowest number?
Correct. I agree with you. I only used 1.3 because that's the last position I want to be in at 1.3. I would start lower and see if I can't settle for something short of that.
I think 1 gets them the headlines just as well as, or even like 900, because they'll round up.
I think that lawyer might have, I mean, it depends on the lawyer's ego at that point, because right now the record in Delaware is $1 billion set by Dell in 2023.
Gotcha. So they want $1 billion in 1.
Yep.
Maybe if they drop their salary from 33 to 25.
It could, but I mean, they do have some power, because what if it goes to the judge and the judge says, okay, we're going to use $2004. Elon's going to get 30 billion, and therefore you save the shareholders 20 billion. You're now getting 33% of 20 billion. I don't like that outcome.
I think the question you're asking is who has the bigger balls of steel? And I'm going to guess that the lawyers have more to lose with the money and reputation than Elon.
Bingo.
Look, they're going to do everything they possibly can under the bounds of the law to not pay them 1 cent. And of course, they may be forced to pay them or something like that. But, you know, let me tell you about a lawsuit that I was involved in with Elon. And this guy said, look, pay me $40,000 to settle and I'll walk away. If you don't, you're going to pay over $100,000 in legal bills. And I'm going to file thousands of pages of frivolous documents that you'll be forced to respond to. And Elon and I said, okay, go ahead. And I ended up paying $120,000. Tesla probably ended up paying, $1 million to Cooley or whoever the hell their firm was. And, then they got it dismissed. So this is kind of the way Elon thinks. Even when the rational thing is to settle or just to make some agreement, he tends to stand on principle. So I could see them appealing it. I mean, does anyone really believe that shareholders are better off by paying this lawyer billions of dollars instead of paying Elon? I mean, that's fucking outrageous. So they're going to do everything they can within the bounds of the law to avoid doing that. And, I think an appeal, maybe some other type of deal is on the table. I'm not a legal expert on what their options are, but I mean, it's just absurd and it's not right for them to take money from the shareholders that was supposed to be used to compensate the CEO. We're happy to compensate the CEO because then he stays interested in the company. But this isn't the case. And I mean, there's a really strong case to make that the judge was wrong, that Elon was going to leave Tesla. He wasn't just, guaranteed to be the CEO working for free forever. A lot of her sort of opinion, I think, was a little bit of a leap. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this overturned on appeal. It's unprecedented. It's completely unprecedented. And when you have something that's unprecedented, and she said, we're going where nobody has gone before. So that gives them a pretty good grounds for an appeal, I think.
I would disagree with you, because if you look at where she says we're going to go where nobody's gone before, she's referring to what happened in the Tesla versus Solar City cases. That's what she was referring to. Is this written, slanted, biased? Is there biases against Elon in the language that she uses, in her phraseology? Yeah. But at the end of the day, she followed Delaware law, in my opinion. She followed Delaware law, put in enough facts in Elon's own testimony that he wasn't going to leave Tesla, that the Supreme Court is going to be hard to overturn it on any basis, because the courts give very wide discretion and latitude to judges to apply facts to the law. And if you look at the Solar City cases and the way the Supreme Court wrote their affirmation of the Chancery Court in allowing Tesla to purchase Solar City, even though they found the price and process inadequate, she does the exact opposite, giving all the reverse facts to support her legal conclusion that that the shareholder vote wasn't enfranchised. They were disenfranchised so bad by the board not disclosing that their vote couldn't cleanse the whole transaction like it could in Solar City, because the board gave a proper information to the shareholders. So they were enfranchised. So when they voted to approve it, that overrode the price and the process not being fair.
Yeah. I mean, I think the shareholder vote, to overturn a shareholder vote is, you really have to have a strong basis to do that. I mean, this decision fucks over shareholders more than paying Elon ever did, right? Paying billions of dollars for no reason out of our cash pile for what? It's just ridiculous. So I think, they got strong grounds for an appeal. Appeal will easily be accepted. You say, okay, we want to stay on this decision until we have a decision on the appeal. Okay. Now you don't have to worry about it until you've got a decision on the appeal. And let's say they eventually go, okay, you have to pay $1 billion or whatever. What are they going to do? How are they going to force them to pay? They're going to move to Texas. And you have, in the United States, you can appeal. You can, courts do make decisions that are a mistake, which is why we have the ability to appeal. I could see even in a case where they're asked to pay, they just say, go fuck yourself.
That's sure, they can do that, and then they can have collection attorneys be going after them. It's not a proper thing to do.
Yeah,
They
it's
are
not a proper
negotiating.
thing to do, but I mean,
They are negotiating right now on that final order, and one of the things that they are negotiating is attorney's fees. So if you're negotiating now the issues and attorney's fees, why not just wrap it up into a settlement and be done with it?
Because Tesla's not traditional and Elon's not traditional. He's not going to follow a traditional playbook here. It's not risk minimization, it's doing the right thing.
Xander Sky.
Yeah, I was gonna say, doesn't that just become a money grab from attorneys as opposed to what's the right thing for shareholders?
Happens all the time, unfortunately, especially in M&A cases, mergers and acquisitions, and the disclosures given during the merger and acquisitions being inadequate. That attorneys have created a whole cottage industry in going after M&As on the disclosures, and they win because the company will pay them off. It's unfortunately, part of doing business.
listen, We're going to make these guys hate their lives before they see a penny. If we have to pay them a penny, we will make it the worst experience of their life. We will make it so stressful, they all end up getting divorced before we give them that first penny. Because if, you just settle, well, oh, it's cheaper and easier to settle, then people keep suing you. You keep settling. They keep taking money from shareholders. Elon is not rational about these things. He doesn't just do the rational thing that's going to save him the most money. He takes it personally. This is his baby. And for some fucking blood sucking lawyers to take money that's supposed to be transitioning the world to clean energy, fuck them. This isn't right. And you don't just lay down and take it, even when some government body or some court says this is how it's going to be. You fight, you make your case. And they absolutely have a case here. 73% of the fucking shareholders voted for this. There was nothing wrong with this deal. We weren't counting on, you know, the board statement. We looked at the plan ourselves. So I believe in the justice system ultimately. And I think justice is going to prevail one way or another. I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a lawyer, but I believe everything will work out in a just way. And maybe that's a little bit naive, but let's watch and see.
This is also pretty high profile, right? So what happens is the Supreme Court not able to overrule this at any point because it goes to the Delaware Supreme Court?
No, it's only to the Delaware Supreme Court. That's it. It doesn't go to the U.S. Supreme Court.
I guess worst case scenario, if they do have to pay him a penny, it would be nice to see laws change around this.
Yeah, I think this whole, just pay the attorneys, make it go away is it's like what law people are taught, and I just don't see Tesla going that standard route. This is wrong. Shareholders decided. The company value was taken from 60 billion to 600 billion plus, obviously, but current value. And why would they just accept this? It just seems insane to pay any attorney anything to make it go away. When the merits of the case, I think make it that they should argue it all the way to the highest levels.
I don't disagree with what you gentlemen have been saying, so don't think that I'm arguing that Tesla shouldn't appeal it, or take it all the way. I'm just trying to be a little bit of a realist after being in the being an attorney for 30 years and seeing all sorts of cases do all sorts of crazy things, and knowing what appeals courts do and the deference they give to the judges. Like I said before, I think there's less than a 50-50 chance that they win. And if you lose, the stakes are high, and it is a high profile company. And you do have the shareholders to think about. You do have fiduciary responsibility still, that you take a settlement and make it go away. You save yourself a year and a half of heartache and pain and uncertainty on Tesla as to how the courts are going to rule. You take that out, you move on to the new compensation package, and you live to fight another day. You take the lessons that you've learned here and apply them to the next package. So you're insulating yourself from this type of activity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they are negotiating a possible settlement, but in the past, Tesla and Elon have had a history of not necessarily taking the rational settlement option. So, maybe there is an acceptable settlement that can be reached. I don't know. But, we'll have to see what happens. Really, anything could happen.
Correct. I agree 100% with that statement.
I just want to apologize.
Xander, you don't have to raise
I was going
that.
to say, I just want to apologize. My UI is all messed up. I was trying to fix it. You can ignore the gestures that were going on.
Can you guys hear Xander? Oh,
Yeah.
there. Okay, go ahead.
Ken, so what sort of precedent does it set for the entire, corporate structures and agreements, and why is Elon responding? Is he over correcting, saying don't incorporate in Delaware and now New York, or is this just part of the 30 years of experience in the process of just settling cases?
I would like to move out of Delaware, but for different reasons than doing a knee-jerk reaction to this case. So,
Elaborate.
yeah, I'm in favor of moving out of Delaware. Not necessarily to Texas. I prefer Nevada, but I'm definitely in favor of moving out of Delaware, but for different
Can you
reasons.
elaborate on those reasons, please?
You can't create a second class of share. Elon wants control more than he wants money. If you go to Texas or Nevada, you can create a second share that has super voting rights. Elon referenced Zuckerberg and the fact that him and his heirs are going to have control of Facebook for the next 300 years. And that's true because Zuckerberg owns Class B shares that have 10 times the voting power of a regular Class A share. Let's do the same thing for Elon. Let's create that Class B share that gives super voting powers so he has control. You can set it up just like Ford Motor set up their A and B shares. They have 40% voting control of the board. They only own 8 million shares of Ford Motor, but they own way more Class B shares to give them that 40% vote of the board. Let's do the same thing for Elon. Nevada has a more robust business law cases. They have better case law in Nevada, more of it than Texas does. And even if you move to Texas or Nevada, there's no guarantee that you're not going to get the same result just because you moved. So I don't know where the idea came from that, hey, if we move to Texas, all's going to be hunky dory and Elon's going to get whatever Elon wants. No, you create that second share, and now you actually do create him as a controller. Then you don't have to worry about disclosures because Elon controls the board. So you're taking those disclosure cases, like this is basically now a disclosure case, away. So you're stopping those lawyers that are hunting that easy, low hanging fruit.
I do want to say, by the way, thank you for bringing your expert opinion. I know sometimes it can feel intense, but I think we do all respect the fact that you're presenting the facts as they are, even if we don't like hearing it.
Absolutely. Great point, Meta. Yeah, we do appreciate it.
Oh, and I appreciate the pushback too. I love the debate. That's, I want to find the holes in my argument to make it better. So I always say a good lawyer can argue either side because that's how well they have to know the facts and the law of the case. So I appreciate the ability to come on here and present a theory or an idea and get pushback. I enjoy that. So I appreciate you gentlemen. And the knowledge that you bring is just immense.
Thank you, Ken. All right. Anything else from the board? From the speaker board? Not the board. Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of FSD 12. You probably covered it extensively already, but you know, any thoughts on that front from you, Yaman? Or
Well, I
should I
think
listen to the videos?
so. What I know so far is that less than 1% of the fleet has it, but it's rolling out, and Omar expects it to roll out throughout the week. And it's really difficult to say, I think, at this point of the software's development that, unless you see fleet-wide data, it's hard to tell improvement. But there are many reports of it being more smooth. We know per AI driver that it does U-turns now. Omar, anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, it's super exciting. I hope everyone likes it. And I hope we can see people subscribing or buying FSD to try it. If we don't, then we should cut the price of FSD until we see that growth. That's the story we need to tell. There's no earnings growth coming from the vehicle business, at least not this year, or at least not until rates come down. Okay, so no growth from the vehicle business. Energy is doing good. Energy is going to grow, but that's like a few $1 billion compared to like 80 or $90 billion. So where's the growth? This is it. Okay? We need this shit to fucking work. And we need people to like it and we need them to buy it. So hopefully they do. But if you can just tell Wall Street that story, hey, how are earnings going to grow? Well, okay, everybody's sort of in this race to the bottom, but we've got this software business that nobody else has. Okay, boom, there. You can easily double your earnings with that. Before autonomy, you don't need robotaxi. Just make people like the damn thing and subscribe for $99 a month, and you can deliver earnings growth and tell a story that'll get Wall Street excited.
So, Omar, do you think that 12 and this like step change has that potential, or does it require storytelling?
I do. I think if you send a free trial out to everybody, you probably have a decent number of them subscribe. Now, what is that? I don't know. And I think people are a little bit cautious just because it is kind of like the boy who cried autonomy, right? We've been trying this for so many years, so people are kind of like, FSD, nothing's ever really going to happen. And it kind of does seem like this is a material shift, but I think people are cautious and getting too excited and kind of, just making the same mistake over and over again. But it really does seem like this is a breakthrough. This is really what should have been version 1 in a lot of ways. This gives them the ability to learn. They talked about it learning how to do a U-turn without them specifically programming in a new U-turn function. It just emerged from the data set. So I'm cautiously optimistic. The early reviews seem to be good, but ultimately we need data showing that people are trying it and liking it. And if we can't do that, then we need to give free trials and offer temporary price cuts to get that growth and tell that story to Wall Street. I mean, think about this, you guys. You can go lease a Model 3 for $329. Amazing car, and it can run FSD for $200 a month, or even, for free if you use the referral program. So $329 a month, $529 a month with FSD, An ordinary American can go and buy a self-driving car, and it can take them parking lot to parking lot without interventions. And an average ordinary person will experience that. That is a disruptive product.
Meta, do you think Tesla should drop the price from $199 to $99?
I think they could do that and state that it's a temporary thing, like a 1 year promo. Maybe if you buy 3 months or a 1 year subscription, effectively doing something along those lines, right? Maybe you pay $1,000 and you get it for the year,
Bulk
and then
discount,
it's
annual
199
subscription.
after that. Yeah,
I mean, if they did something like, you can subscribe and the money you pay monthly goes towards the purchase later on, don't you think that would work too?
that would kill the purchasing completely, though. You can't make the subscription more attractive than the purchase, in my opinion. I think you have to say something to the effect of, if you're a subscriber today, if you buy FSD today, we assure you that no subscribers are going to be able to be on the Robotaxi network until we raise the price of FSD.
This is all too complicated. This shit's already too fucking
Good point.
complicated as it is. You need to get a PhD just to figure out how to buy this thing, right? And what happens when a consumer is indecisive? Should I buy or should I subscribe? Well, let me just do neither. Let me actually cancel the whole order screen because I'm confused and I need to go ask my grandson about this before I put the order in. So here's what I would do. You put a little button on the navigation system where the navigate on autopilot button used to be, and you punch in a destination, and they can just hit that, and it says, okay, I'll do this drive for you that's in your navigation system, and you pay me $3 or whatever. They touch the button, you charge their card, and then they can use FSD. Now they start using it. They're doing a $3 ride here, a $5 ride here. Pretty soon they've spent $320 on FSD in a couple weeks. And then they say, okay, I could subscribe for a month for $200 and then get unlimited. And then they subscribe. And now you start talking. Then you introduce some family plans and shit, right? So there's so many things they could do, but they haven't really cared to do it because they haven't wanted to maximize the number of FSD users. The software was just really too shitty to push it too hard, right? So if you cut the price in half, you could probably actually increase the revenue. You could make more money selling it for less because you'd have such an increase in the take rate, potentially or theoretically. So the only reason not to do it is if you don't want too many users. Now, as the product crosses the threshold where, as Elon said, when it gets super smooth, we'll give the free trial. As it crosses that super smooth threshold, which it is, then yeah, you actually want people to use it. You're not worried about it. You're hopefully less worried about crashes. You can push free trials, you can push subscriptions, and everything will be great. People will be happy. So I hope that time has come now with 12 and the wide release of 12, that they can change their strategy away from being a restrictive strategy where they almost don't want you to have FSD to a strategy where FSD is literally installed on every single car by default. And you buy it, you get like a month free or whatever, then you can start paying on demand, subscribe or buy it, roll it into your car loan. This is a product that's like crack, okay? Once you get used to it, you don't want to go back to not having it. So this is the secret drug dealers use. You always give them the first hit of meth free, okay? And then they come back for more. So you give them some cheap crack, you cut FSD to 99. They go, okay, great. They subscribe. Then they start to kind of like it. They go, oh shit, okay. Let me stay subscribed to this. They keep paying you every month. They're not buying a new car, but that cash flow is coming into your business every month. Before you had to go bend metal and make a car, you had to buy a giant casting press to make $10. Now the guys credit card is just getting charged. He might even forget he subscribed, but his credit card's just getting charged in the background and cash flow's coming in. That's what people love, when you're just charging people's credit cards and they're going, oh, okay, this is actually useful. So, it becomes a completely different relationship with the consumer. Then it comes time to buy a new vehicle. And he goes, oh, you know what? I really like this Rivian R2. I actually like it better than the Model Y, but they don't have FSD. I couldn't give that up. So I'm going to get another Model Y or a Model X or a Cybertruck or whatever, maybe even, some other third party vehicle that is licensed FSD. But I'm not going to go to a vehicle that doesn't have it, because as great as that vehicle is, I might like, this gear tunnel or whatever feature on the vehicle. I might like the way it looks, but I couldn't go back to having to drive it manually all the time.
Omar, do you think it needs to have um like no nag for all of your wonderful plan, which I love, to occur?
I mean, there's no doubt it would be insanely more popular without the nag. So I do think the steering wheel nag absolutely has to go. It has to go to cabin cam only. And eventually you want to start removing cabin cam. So I would say maybe, okay, on the highways, we can maybe remove cabin camera in certain scenarios if it's a clear day on the highway, whatever. Just like what Mercedes does, where they say if you're in a traffic jam, you can watch a movie, whatever. We can do the same thing. We've all used autopilot in a traffic jam. Nothing's gonna fucking happen, right? And you can still beep at them and tell them to pay attention. But yeah, let them use their phone in a traffic jam. And we all know that you can do this. We've all kind of like done this to some extent until the thing starts beeping at us. And, I had turned the nag on my car off and I was driving around. It's completely unnecessary. It doesn't need to be there. The softer can just drive around on its own for an hour without you touching anything. Right? I mean, so as the softer gets better and better, this stuff is obviously going to have to come off. Blue Cruise and Super Cruise already don't require a nag on the highway. So, I think they're kind of tiptoeing around with NHTSA. NHTSA's like, this is kind of crazy what you're doing, releasing this end-to-end system. So they're kind of trying to say, okay, look, we're going to be super careful, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I mean, when you take it off, it's huge. Like I turned off the nag on my dad's car, and then he was just like, oh my God, this is a completely different experience of using FSD. It's not annoying the hell out of me. So I really want everyone to experience that. But then they call me when they send me FSD 12 and they go, "Hey, we turned the nags up to 11." And and they're like, "We're going to roll it back later, but we turned it up to 11 for now." And now you can't even scroll the scroll wheel to get rid of the nag. So that annoyed everybody, of course, and
Yeah.
it sort of defeats my trick. So it's overall very annoying. I'm very pissed that they've made this change where you can't use the scroll wheels. And Elon's on Twitter saying we're going to get rid of the nags, but it's going in the other direction. So it's definitely a frustration, but once they lift it, oh my god, it's going to be incredibly glorious. And we are getting to that level of reliability where I think they can do so safely.
Meta.
Do you agree that 12.2.1's nag is much reduced compared to 12.1.2?
Absolutely. I noticed it right away.
Yeah, I saw like 4 to 6 minutes. I was watching the live stream from a user, I think Miss Jellybean or something like that. It was like a 40-minute ride, and every single
Oh,
time there
she
was a
got FSD 12?
oh yeah, she did.
Oh my god.
Thankfully, finally, it's real now. You're not a liar. Um, but the thing I was saying is, I say this in jest, by the way. But yeah, the thing was, every single time I saw a nag, I was like watching the time and just watching when it was coming up. And what I observed was it came on right before entering the highway, right after exiting the highway, which seems like probably heuristics as to when to nag. And it also came on every single time she looked at her phone or turned around because her phone kept falling off the roof to try and like mess with stuff. But outside of those situations, I feel like it didn't really go off. And like she was messing around the map one time and it went off. So I think it's really trying to adhere. I forget exactly what it is. I think it might be WT26 as well, but there's some homologation rules in the US that defines how many seconds of a glance off the screen you can look before it's considered too much of a glance. It's such a weird rule, but it has to do with that font size stuff that they rolled back recently. That could be driving how long they're expecting you to look forward. So like we might have to like lobby NHTSA to change that particular rule.
I've honestly thought about suing them.
I was just literally thinking the same exact thing. Like
How do
2
we get
seconds
6
ago.
shares of NHTSA?
You don't need
Because
shares.
I
You
mean,
can just sue them.
they literally are reducing the take rate of a software that saves lives.
Well, it's not about reducing the take rate, but look, my argument is this. You're requiring me to touch the wheel. I'm not a fucking dumbass. I've been using this shit for like 10 years now. I know I'm supposed to fucking touch the wheel. You don't need to remind me, right? Just because someone else doesn't know, I know, okay? So I should have the ability to modify my car to turn that off because I believe it puts me in danger. If I have to touch the wheel when the thing is like making a right or left turn and I accidentally disengage it, then it's putting me in danger and it's wearing me out. I have to put my sort of hand there. There's a, potential for me to like, tug it. Like you think about they were blaming that drunk driving accident on Tesla. You think about like a drunk driver, not that I'm encouraging anybody to be drunk on FSD, but you have to give it the Goldilocks touch. You have to touch it just enough that it recognizes your hand, but not too much that it disengages. It's so difficult to do just right. I mean, not for me, but for a new user. It's just inviting error, it's inviting accidents, especially as you get to a scale of millions of users. So to force us to do this thing and not give us the ability to turn it off, even for like super technical people who can kind of hack it, is really putting our lives at risk unnecessarily. So they're harming us. That's really my read on it. I mean, yeah, for new users, maybe you kind of help them know that they have to hold the wheel, but it shouldn't be something that you force on expert users who've used it for thousands and thousands of miles. And the cabin camera is so good, that's all you need. If I'm looking at the road, we're good, okay? That's it. And then again, you look at Blue Cruise and Super Cruise, no nag at all. They actually advertise that it's hands-free.
Yeah.
So
Do
what's
you
going
feel
on
it
here?
nags in 12.2.1 when you're steering straight ahead? Cuz in 11.4.9 I found I didn't get lucky enough to get 12 yet, but in 11.4.9 I find when I'm driving, as long as I'm looking forward, it doesn't nag, and as soon as I glance at my phone it gets mad. Do you think 12.2.1 is at the same level, or do you think it's still more sensitive than that?
11.4.9 nags. It takes a while to nag if you're looking forward and using properly, but it does nag after 5 minutes or so, depending on the situation, obviously.
Fair. I think it might reset at stoplights or something.
If I'm looking at the road, I can go like a minute or two without it bugging me. So, this stuff's all temporary, obviously, but it's very annoying. It has nothing to do with the actual machine, the actual self-driving. It's just like poke the monkey every few seconds so you can see if he's awake. And the monkey doesn't like getting poked.
Yeah, the other thing is this is only going to incentivize people to start putting nag defeat physical devices on the wheels or things like that. It just and it goes against their right to repair. There's all these like silly things being done. I'm also curious, like what happens if somebody covers the camera? Does it just default to what they do for vehicles
It
without the
won't
camera?
turn on. It'll
It won't turn
say
on.
it says uncover the camera
That's
or
so
we're
dumb.
we're turning it off.
Isn't
Yeah.
that how Rivian worked around their requirement by just saying, "Oh, we can't seem to access the camera anymore"?
I mean, they have an IR blaster on the latest models and an IR camera, so they can tell if it's covered versus just dark, and they'll basically, beep at you and tell you to uncover it. I mean, some people say they have been able to get around it by using like the sun visor or something, but generally it, kind of recognizes if you're trying to fool it and then it won't let you turn on autopilot until you uncover it.
Joey?
I got 12.2.1. It's pretty awesome.
Hey, congratulations. That's so awesome. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely 2 steps forward. Maybe like different things that I've encountered, but yeah, it is night and day for sure.
Wait, you said 2 step forwards. Does that mean no steps back?
I'm still debating if there's a step back. I have to drive it a little bit more.
This is where Iman, you say let's go.
Yeah, let's go. Um,
I haven't heard one person say, "Oh my god, I got V12 and it's a piece of shit, just like the last version." Everybody says, "Yeah, I noticed it's better right away."
I heard one person, this guy named Omar, was complaining that the previous version he had was better for a brief moment.
But he was
Yeah.
hangry.
I find it funny how people react to that post, you know? I was just giving my first impressions. I was literally in the car, and that was just my honest first impression. I also hadn't eaten anything that day, so maybe I was a little bit hangry and impatient, but that was just what I thought, you know? So I'm obviously desensitized to it. I've had V12 for weeks. So that wowness of, "Oh my god, it's so much better," it's just sort of become expected. So overall, I haven't had a takeover yet with the latest build, and I did like 5 or 6 drives, a few hours. So overall, it was really impressive. I find it funny that when I say something good, people go, "I don't believe you. You're making it up." And then when I say something bad, people are like, "Oh my god, it's horrible." Even though almost every other review is saying this is a huge step forward.
Eric,
I had a. Oh, sorry.
do you identify as Eric now?
Oh, hey, just a quick question. Anyone in Canada who has the V12 yet? Or is it a US only thing?
No Canadians yet.
There were some posts about they're going to start providing subscription in Canada soon from the person who's head of Tesla BizDev on Twitter.
Oh, I see. All right. That's all I wanted to know for statistical purposes. Thanks.
Yeah, Rohan Patel finally answered and said they're going to bring FSD subscription to Canada or look into it, as well as annual premium connectivity.
Oh, well, I don't mean the subscription. I mean the V12.
Yeah, no V12 in Canada yet. Tesla Scope hasn't seen any builds going over there, but I imagine it will very soon.
Do you have a sense of what percentage of Tesla owners have Tesla Scope or how big their user base is? Just to get like a sense of percentages.
Less than 1%.
Okay, so it's very possible it is out there. It's just not with one of their users.
Yeah.
Yeah, assuming they rolled it to 1% of random customers and they have 1% of users, that's 1 in 1,000 chance we'd actually see that.
You'd probably see somebody from Canada.
Maybe, yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments? So while you were gone, Joey, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple of spots where I hit on the accelerator to not like hit a red light, but I think that might go away when I try this new automatic speed set or set.
Got you. Thank you. So while you were gone, we settled Elon's compensation and then unsettled it, and then we sued NHTSA.
Did you
And
also cure world hunger?
that's next on the agenda.
That's only if you give this very particular person $5 billion.
Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
Trust them, though. They will not give you a plan.
So what do you guys want to go back to compensation plan discussion real quick?
I had a quick question about the NHTSA thing, if we can ask about that
Yeah,
first.
go ahead.
Ken, since you're a lawyer, I don't know if you know about this space, but like, how does the Tesla community go about petitioning NHTSA to change particular rules?
Write your congressman would be the knee jerk reaction. But really, it's probably the most effective because if you're talking about rules that have already been promulgated, then you've missed the public discussion part of the rule. So that ship has
I mean,
sailed.
the thing is, there is no actual rule that says they have to have a nag. It's more of a kind of like on an enforcement basis that they're sort of coming to these agreements about what it should look like. So, I'm honestly like even just a letter, like if we just wrote them a straight up letter, they are ultimately serving us, trying to keep us safe. So I think they would listen to us with open ears. That'd probably be something to try before suing them, honestly.
I've been working behind the scenes a little bit the last few weeks on creating a petition to change a couple things for the petition for the NHTSA. So in terms of like paper recalls, for example, that is something that they have the right to just change on their own without any congressional or law changing. But like, let's say if they want to change a software designation to no longer, consider it a recall, that's something that Congress will have to do. Like NHTSA doesn't have the right to do that on their own. Um, I don't know where like the nag would fall in that. I imagine that they can just make that rule on their own, but I don't know for sure.
They most likely can make that rule on their own because they're given enabling rules that they have a right to enforce and create their own rules. So that's probably one that they can control on their own, and doing a petition to them is not a bad idea. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but if they get enough of them, you might be able to move them a little bit. And I still don't get how GM and Ford can advertise their ADS hands free and GM show a driver of a truck trailering a vehicle with his hands not on the wheel. How is that allowed?
Especially when you realize that these systems actually require intervention way more than autopilot does.
Is there any history or example of this being done where it's to loosen rules? Because I can understand people petitioning to tighten rules. Um, I'm just curious, like, if we wanted to get the ball rolling on this, is it just like a online petition that we fill out? Because I remember back in the day, there was like different things that people were trying to do about making the internet quote unquote more secure, but it was actually like going to make tiered payments for different websites, and that was going to actually make the internet less usable. And people rallied and they prevented those rules from getting passed. What do you do to start something? Does it have to come from Congress?
I think Sawyer's got a good idea about the recall. I think we should keep them as like two separate things because the recall's a little more reasonable, So you just say, look, da da da. We don't want to push our luck if they're reading the recall thing and going, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense. And then we go, and we need to get rid of the nag too. Then they might say, all right, these guys are maybe a little over the top. But I think, theoretically, the way it works is if you just spit facts, they can't disagree, right? If you say, look, this recall thing, here's why it's an issue and why it's a safety issue. Well, number one, we're cutting down a lot of trees, which we don't need to do. We can email them, we can text them. I mean, the update probably comes before the letter comes. So modernizing that, it would save a lot of paper at the very least. But more than that, we really risk confusing consumers, right? If many of these recalls don't actually require you to do anything, then we're actually desensitizing people to recalls. What happens if an actual serious mechanical issue with the Tesla comes out and they have to send a letter and it's like, oh, just throw it in the pile with all the other letters, right? A softer update is not the same thing as a physical recall. There's obviously distinction. Something that's going to get fixed itself, you just have to push a button on your phone compared to something you have to bring it into the service center for. So we need to be clear about that just to help consumers understand when they need to take action and when they don't need to take action. And that's really a public safety issue. So call it, a softer recall or whatever. You can still have a recall process. You can notify people, but you don't need to send a letter about a software update. I mean, this is just like government bureaucracy in a nutshell, doing something that makes literally no sense just because they haven't modernized these rules. And it's only Tesla today, but if the industry has any sense, they're going to be adopting these practices too. And it's only going to become a bigger issue and not just a Tesla specific one.
What makes no sense to me is that NHTSA requires automakers to send paper recall letters for software updates completed within 60 days, but doesn't require the same for physical recalls, which seems insane to me. And then this trains vehicle owners to ignore the NHTSA warnings because most recalls are already fixed by the time they receive the paper. My mom got a paper the other day from NHTSA saying, hey, you got a really important recall that needs to like update your icon size font by like a few percentage points, but don't worry about it. I guess it's already been installed on your car, it looks like. Well, then why did you send the paper? Like, it's just pointless. I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure this math is right, but Tesla had to send, I think, like 2 million letters um, for this latest software update recall. Like 100 trees had to be cut down for that. And Tesla doesn't want to do that. It's just a waste of resources, waste of money, administrative time. All this makes no sense. I'm going to be putting this in my petition. I hope the community really rally around this when I release it, because this is really something I think Tesla can point to, being like, look, there's support for this. Let's get moving on it.
Yeah, I'll sign that for sure. And at the point where the consumers you're trying to help are petitioning you and saying, "What the fuck are you doing?" I mean, you better listen to them. They're the people you're supposed to be helping, right? With this whole recall system.
I think notifying people through email and mobile app notifications is sufficient in 2024. It's not 30 years ago anymore. And most people, I have to imagine, don't even open up their recall notices. I certainly don't open up most of them.
All right, we have a question from David. David, go ahead.
Is there like a penalty for Tesla if they don't send them? Like if Tesla's the one sending them, what if they just don't send the software update recall
Yeah, NHTSA will
notices?
get pissed at them, so they have to send it.
But I mean, wouldn't people like rally around Tesla at that point, and so it becomes a big deal? Like,
You don't want to fight the battle at that level. You just want to follow the law. Change the
makes
law,
sense.
yeah, but just, follow the law. Don't make them pissed at you for no reason. I mean, so here's what actually happened that caused this whole thing. So NHTSA launched an investigation into Tesla over emergency vehicles. You had a situation where emergency vehicles would park on the side of the highway, but they'd often be like the corner of the vehicle, the fire truck, the police car is like sticking out of the corner of the shoulder. And then you have a Tesla on autopilot and someone's not paying attention, they might collide with that vehicle. Now you've got first responders who are responding to an emergency, and bam, another emergency just came and hit their car and maybe injured them. So this was a serious issue that was worth investigating. Now, while NHTSA was investigating the issue, Tesla released a software update that detected emergency lights. And when it detected emergency lights, it would respond by slowing down, moving over, whatever, to reduce the risk of this type of thing happening. Now, NHTSA got very upset because they wanted to recall autopilot for this issue, right? To show that they're doing something, they're not just staying by whatever. So they said, hey, wait a minute. If they can just fix any safety issue before we can even finish our investigation, then how do we get the headline that we got this big recall? How do we even recall these cars if it's been already fixed? So they said, look, any software update you do that's safety related, you need to issue a full recall notice. And they were very upset with them. And that's how we got to this situation now where even something very minor like the icon font size requires them to send out a recall notice. So it's really a policy that, you know, Tesla was not sending out recall notices for every minor software update, and NHTSA was not enforcing any action against them. They said, yeah, sure, you don't need to send out a recall for a minor software update. But because of this investigation, which they didn't want to just drop, they wanted to say, okay, this ended in us recalling the product. That's why they ended up taking this different sort of approach to it, where they said, we do want you to send a recall notice, even for a minor software update. And, they kind of have a point, right? These things should be documented, whatever. But they are kind of using an archaic system and trying to make it work for something that's very new.
All right. Sawyer, what are the 2 points on your petition for NHTSA?
So the goal here is to be not bash them. We want to just sort of encourage them to modernize their language. But part one is going to be the paper recalls issue, because that's something that they can change on their own without any, going to Congress and changing the law. They can do that on their own. They have that jurisdiction. Part two will be, encouraging them to have a better distinction between physical and software recalls. There's too much confusion. We already went all over those points, but that is something that they can't do on their own. That's going to require likely some congressional law changing. So that's will be part two. I think part two is more important, but because it requires congressional stuff, we're going to make it part two because it's just a harder thing to do.
How many signatures do you think you need?
I don't know if there's like a specific number. We just hopefully just get as many as we can, spread this thing far and wide. We'll probably release it in like a week or two. I've been working behind the scenes with some people on it. But we don't want to, it's not going to be a super long petition. We want to keep it short and simple just so people, can easily understand it. Doesn't have to take a long time to read. But we're going to do it via change.org because I think that's sort of a brand that people recognize in the petition space and are comfortable, putting their name on there.
Are you going to have like a marketing campaign for it?
I mean, you guys will be it, right? I'll share it, and then hopefully everyone else shares it. That's pretty much it.
You're not going to do
But
TV ads?
yeah, I was going to say, you stole my joke.
I'm gonna do
I
a
think we
Super
might need a
Bowl
Super
ad
Bowl
next year.
commercial.
Do you want a Super Bowl commercial?
Yeah. Like
Hey,
Tesla, we're gonna be using word of mouth with this thing.
Joshua, what's your question?
Yeah, I think the
e-
petition will be a big success.
my question was, Elon said that the computer chip for version 3, the one before the most recent one, will be full self-driving capable. But I'm a little bit hesitant. Does anyone know if that's the case? Like, does anyone have any opinions on that? Because I'm either going to buy a used car or a brand new one pretty soon.
Omar?
Well, as of today, hardware 3 and 4 both run the latest FSD beta. So how long they'll maintain compatibility on both? Obviously, hardware 3 will probably drop compatibility first. I mean, they're going to maintain it for a long time. So theoretically, you shouldn't have to worry about it. But hardware 4 is obviously better. The cameras are higher resolution. The computer is a newer generation computer. The field of view has been updated a little bit. So if it's not a huge price difference, you obviously want hardware 4. It's better. It's going to be supported for longer. But if you want to buy a used car with hardware 3 and that's a good deal, I wouldn't think twice about buying a hardware 3 car, honestly. because I've driven my dad's hardware 3 car and I've driven the hardware 4 car I have, and the performance is about the same. So today, you can run FSD beta whether you're a hardware 3 or hardware 4 car, and the performance is going to be pretty much the same. Longer term, hardware 4 is going to be better and is going to be supported for longer.
Yeah, basically, if you can afford it, get the new Tesla. With Tesla, it's always better to get the new one.
And they're all
But if
hardware 4 now
yeah,
in the
exactly,
US.
and yeah, but if money is a problem and you can only afford a $25,000 used Tesla, then that's better than a new Camry or something. Xander.
On the new vehicles front, I spoke to an employee and I heard that there is a name to the Model 3 Highland Performance, and while couldn't get any specifics out, it sounded like it's coming soon. Do you guys have any details on that front?
I was told by a showroom employee, and this seems to be confirmed somewhat by sightings, that they're gonna make it a little bit differentiated from the other three. It's gonna have a little bit of a wider body, so you're gonna see some difference on the front and the back, as well as some kind of like things on the side that make it a little bit wider. In the interior, you're gonna have some performance seats. I think some images leaked of that this week where you can kind of see what those look like. So, kind of like these performance bucket seats that hold you in better, and a few other things on the interior. And obviously, the best performance out of a Model 3 performance we've ever seen. So, that's going to be super interesting. A lot of people have been wondering about that. And I kind of wonder if it qualifies for the EV tax credit because it's this weird thing where the Model 3 performance qualifies, but it doesn't exist. So if they brought it back, would it qualify? I don't know. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a really exciting product.
I heard something like 700 horsepower to the wheels.
I think we should stop advertising the cars as horsepower and start advertising the EVs as how many ice power they have.
What's the current Model 3? How does that compare to the current Model 3 performance?
Doesn't exist anymore, does it?
Let's see. 271 to 455 Model 3 2023 horsepower. Yeah, and you're saying 700?
That's the number that I was told, and I was blown away because he was comparing it to a Model S Plaid that they were driving, and talking about how the cost per horsepower is just will be obscene with this. So but that's one person, so I want more data and see what you guys heard before I give it any credit.
So when I just Google 2023 Model S long range is 670. So this is more than Model S long range. And slider, obviously. This thing's gonna fly.
Agreed. Yeah, I was, and that's a good point. I don't remember what the S was, and but I wouldn't give it. This is literally one person, so let's not get too excited.
Okay. Brandon?
Hey, I know that Model Y is making up like a big bulk of the sales right now, but I'm trying to get a Model 3 right now, and there's like none. You can't get a Model 3 until the end of March, and that's going to be the end of the first quarter. So I'm wondering if there's going to be like a pretty big drop in cars, or if they were like making up for it and more Model Ys.
Yeah, why do you think we've been seeing all these promotions and discounts? FSD, free supercharging, all of this stuff. It does seem like a lot of people want the new Model 3, and the supply in Fremont hasn't necessarily been what it was under the old model. I mean, I am seeing a lot of them in the showroom, so they're at least making a few. But it does pose a potential risk. and they're certainly offering a lot of incentives, but we'll have to see. They have big shoes to fill with their Q4 numbers.
Yeah, and the other thing is, they're letting you lease a Model Y for the exact same cost as the Model 3, pretty much. And then I found it interesting because I've just been looking around at cars recently, and I was looking at like Hyundai and like Kia, and to lease them, because I don't want to buy right now, I just want to lease. But to lease, it's the same price as a Tesla, pretty much, either a Model Y or a Model 3, within like $30, and then like gas and everything. So it's pretty crazy how much cheaper the cars are now to lease.
So, Omar, did you say Model 3 performance is going to be a little wider body than the non-performance Model 3s?
That's what I heard. I mean, this was a showroom employee, so a lot of times they just read something on the internet, right? You don't know where the information's really coming from. Like they read Sawyer's page or something, and they're like telling me what they read rather than like getting something official from the company. But that's what they told me. And some of the things I've seen online kind of seem to back it up, right? We've seen these Model 3s with the front and the rear and part of the side covered. So, hmm, that's probably the new performance. I think they wanted to just make the performance stand out a little bit compared to the long range and the standard range.
It's actually wild to me how many Tesla sales advisors read something online and then say the same thing to like a potential customer, and then that customer thinks it's an official Tesla stance, when really most of the time it's just not.
So, question from Meta. Has there ever been a situation before where a performance trim has had a different body than, like, a wider body than a long range?
Why is that a question for me?
I don't know. Just I'm picking on you.
I don't know. I was expecting an AI question.
Oh, okay, sorry. But whatever, man. Okay, question for whoever wants to take it. Question for the board.
I feel like Sawyer's the encyclopedia that would know the answer to this.
Well, so okay, so the new Model 3 is about an inch wider, an inch and a half wider than the old Model 3. But it does look like, based on like the spy shots we've seen, that maybe there's like a wider, front splitter and stuff on the new 3. But I don't think the Plaid. I don't know if the Plaid is like wider than like the long range S. Certainly in the past, the performance Model 3 has not been wider than the long range Model 3.
Right,
It
But
would s-
exactly.
that might
And
change with the new one.
it would seem weird because then you would have to have a different stamping or
exactly. That's exactly why
casting. Yeah.
that's exactly why I asked you.
Sorry. First principles, I don't think it makes sense. Uh, but I don't know historically if they've ever done it.
Yeah, it's almost like it would have to have its own production line if it's wider body, right? Or at least some portion of the production line would be.
It already has to have a different production line in a sense to put the extra engine in there. But from what I understand, all the cars have the space to put the extra engine in there. They just only put it in for performance.
Engine?
I kept saying engine motor. My
How dare
apologies.
you?
It's demoted.
How dare you.
I made a nice joke earlier and my brain got fried.
Traditionally, the performance model of every Tesla has just been one with, faster motors, red brake calipers, and the same car body. But it could be that they have something in their production process where they can do it relatively easily. Like, let's say the front fascia, these are like plastic pieces, right? So you have like two variants of the front fascia or something like that. You could probably do that in a way that wasn't too disruptive. And if you can get a higher share of the mix going to the performance trim, you kind of think about like BMW. They got like the 3 Series and they got the M3. So there's a lot of sort of shared stuff there, but you're kind of setting the performance apart. This is the M series. It adds a little bit more sexiness to it. You're not just driving the same car your Model 3 standard range commuter is driving. You got, the performance version.
It's kind of one of the reasons why Apple always makes the phones look different so that you can know if somebody has the newer model or not. So I think you do have to kind of play into that because as much as it seems weird, it is a value that certain customers want is they want to look like they have the more expensive car.
Yeah, Omar, I think you hit the nail right on the head and, kind of, delineating there as far as the trims, that we've seen with BMW, notably, I think the M3, and then compare it to long range and the standard range, which admittedly we have the SR Plus, late 2021, and it's better than any BMW daily driver that I've had. And then, that gets you thinking about, some of this conversation that we're having with trim. I think someone else posted earlier this week around, hey, I changed my tires and, changed my wheels and, I dropped, almost shaved half a second off of my 0 to 60. And so, that's getting me to think just creatively, what can I do? And, for my wife's SR Plus, I have two BMW M's right now, and if this plaid is the real deal and it comes out, I don't think I'm going to be able to hold myself back from, placing the order. It's just too exciting for me. And, you're looking at those horsepower figures of 700, and all that's telling me is that, Tesla's going straight for BMW and AMG, because all the new cars, you talk about the M3 competition, the C63 AMG, the C63S. I mean, with a couple of upgrades, or a piggyback tune, I mean, these cars can push some serious horsepower, 800, 900 horsepower. That's not factory, but again, factory is probably in the 600 to 700 range on both of those two cars. So I think it's really exciting. I'm not super convinced yet that there will be an entirely new, front fender or rear fender to kind of make the car wider. The existing, or the old Model 3, to me, it's already has a crazy, wide body if you compare it to, a similar class of vehicle. But I think you're spot on. You talk about some of those composite upgrades, diffuser, you know, upgrades to the front fascia. Small things can go a long way, I think, with the performance enthusiast group.
Look,
Where?
look, you have to you have to unmute yourself for us to hear you. All right. We have a question on FSD for Omar. No name, go ahead.
Hey, hi, Omar. Thanks for the chance. A quick question. I mean, first of all, thank you for all your FSD videos. Those are really helpful. How do you do that? Like, I mean, I was really curious to ask you for such a long time. I take my hands off the wheel, it starts beeping. How do you do that for such a long time?
Well,
Is there like, yeah.
it's gone now with the apparently new update, so
Yeah,
doesn't
you can't
impact
do it
driving.
anymore with 12.
Yeah.
I had a question. What do you guys think? If this new Model 3 is that insane and like half price of a Model S or whatever, it's just going to get more difficult to justify buying a Model S. I mean, I know that's been a debate for a long time, but besides the suspension and I guess it's a lot faster, but what do you guys think? It's going to definitely eat into the sales of Model S, no?
I mean, it has been eating into the sales of Model S for years. Model S sales never went back to where they were before the Model 3. So, other companies probably would have said, okay, let's not make the Model 3 as good so people buy the Model S. Tesla said, fuck it, let's just make the Model 3 awesome. Now, I just bought a Model S, and there's actually a lot of really cool features it has that are kind of underappreciated that make it worth considering. So, one thing is Model 3's got 330 miles of range or something like that. My Model S has 405. So that's a great amount of range. It's the best on any Tesla. And I love taking long road trips, and it's great to have that range. It's got the air suspension. The screen in the rear is a much bigger screen. It's a bigger size vehicle. It's more comfortable. When we got all our friends in it, They're really happy to have, that extra space. It's got Steam on it. I can play Grand Theft Auto 5. That's not on any other Tesla except the Model S and X. The Model X has doors that open and close by themselves. You can push a button and the door closes. You don't even have to lift your finger and stretch and grab the door. And it's got the HEPA filter. When I'm driving across California, there's this one spot where there's all these cows, and the smell of all this cow shit is so horrible. With the Model 3, I always just had to smell this cow shit. I just had to accept it. With the Model S, boom, bioweapon defense mode. You don't smell anything. So there really are, the Model S is really actually nice. It's, the Model S and X are the best Teslas. They haven't had the limelight like the Model 3 and the Y and the Cybertruck have, but they're pretty damn good vehicles. I'm really liking my Model S. And oh my God, when, I was just driving it the other day on the highway, just like flying, and man, this thing can just drive so fast and you just feel like you're going, a very reasonable speed. It's just like an incredible performance monster. And the Plaid, I was test driving the Plaid. I mean, that thing just feels like you're on a cloud, and the acceleration is like shit your pants acceleration. Like if you've been on like the Mummy at Universal Studios where they just kind of launch you, it's faster than that. It's scarier than a roller coaster. And the three motors, so the Model S and X do have some good things about them, but they probably need an update. I know Sawyer actually wrote a tweet about this recently, so maybe he could summarize like some of what people said, but they maybe do need an update to sort of differentiate them more now that a lot of the nice things about them have come to the 3 and soon the Y. But, frankly, it's just never going to be that much of an important part of the business anymore. I would love for Tesla to focus more on the Model S and X and do like a great thing just to have sort of that halo product. The same way that Apple does the Mac Pro, even though most people aren't going to buy it. I would love to see them just really keep the Model S and X like really great and not feeling old compared to the rest of the lineup. But
What
I just kind of wonder, they're just so immaterial when you got the company now selling millions of vehicles and S and X are under 100,000, that it's hard to really justify the R&D expense.
right? I just wondering though, if also with like parts and it is way more expensive to get them fixed too. So I think that scares people as well. It's not just the upfront, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the tires cost a fucking fortune on this thing.
But you have the long range, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I love it overall, but if you're not the kind of person who's going to buy like a BMW 5 or 7 series or something in that class, then you probably don't want to buy a Model S or X either.
I just think the S is the most beautiful car, period. And I test drove it. I'm totally in love with it. But I'm really struggling to to fork over all that cash when the smartest thing to do is get the Y or the three. But I'm like itching.
Yeah.
That's why I'm.
I would definitely recommend the 3 to most people, especially budget conscious people. You're really not missing that much from the S,
Well,
but
for me, I need a big. I need the Y because the trunk is too small. I'm a drummer, so I need to fit a whole drum set in the car quite often.
yeah, great deals on the Y right now. My roommate just picked one up. They're giving crazy deals and they got the point of sale credit too.
I'm in Sweden, so we don't get much deals here. But yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, you
Look,
got very good English for a Swedish person.
I'm from New York, but I live in Stockholm.
well, you got good English. Look,
Yes, thank you, Yaman, for letting me talk. So I'm a huge of Omar fan. I see like a video for the FSD V12. There's no regression, like mostly positive. For sure, that's something we all see. For example, you can make like U-turns for AI driver, and I see Omar's can do like a curb to curb with like zero inflection. We all agree with that. That's for sure. My question is for like AI. So I'm a AI programmer for deep learning. So the first question, so when we talk about AI right now, it's a black box. So if we talk about like traffic, we really barely know if like what's inside we are doing like for the model, right? It's against the bugs on the dojo. So do you see any, you know, abnormal behavior, or for example, Omar, do you see like anything that is really hard to deal with compared to the previous version, or like some sort of critical problems, maybe like for example, like a wiper or something like that?
Well, the thing about 12 is it just does a lot better. It doesn't have these sort of jerky movements. The heuristics tend to produce way more sort of strange outputs than the end-to-end process. So when you just sort of train it to mimic humans, so many of those scary things that are the reason people would cancel their subscriptions, like, oh my God, it just jerked to the left, jerked to the right. Those just tend to appear much more frequently in the old heuristic space system compared to deep learning end to end. So, there have been some minor regressions, some things that used to work but didn't. I haven't tested all of those on the latest build yet to see if they're fixed. But it's clear that this is the way to go. And i- it is a little bit of a black box, right? You can't just read the code, but it's not a complete black box. We do have kind of ways to look at this and understand through the training set how to shape and mold its behavior into what we want. So overall, I think the results just kind of speak for themselves. Yes, it is a little bit new and maybe scary to have this new process, but I mean, just look at what people are saying. The results speak for themselves. Everybody who tries this agrees this is 100% the way forward. It is clear as day. End to end is the way. And I'm sure there's even other things we haven't thought of that would make it even better. But this is the right direction. End to end learning. Trying to write all that planning and control code ourselves, it was never going to work.
Yeah, thank you, Omar. Like my second question is so a lot of people, you know, they stay negative comment because, you know, like we have you know, added, there's a lot of versions like V10, V11, but I feel like the V12 it's a breakthrough right now. So what do you think, like how far, maybe like 1 or 2 years, how far do you think we can really reach out like level 3 or level 4, maybe like 1 year or something? Because I think that it's so great to see like a V12 right now. I didn't try it best by myself, but I barely see any inventions, which is insane in my opinion.
Yeah, I would consider it to be really a level 4 capable system right now, which is just to say that, and it doesn't mean that it works every time. That's not actually what the SAE levels mean. But in theory, you could have the car drive around without a person and it could go from point to point without crashing. Like, it probably would not crash, right? So, I pinned up a tweet at the top. Like, a lot of people ask this, when is it going to be level 3 or whatever? This is what Tesla's critics have said because they're trying to get people to basically ban this and say it's not actually a level 2 system. They're just calling it a level 2 system so that they can sell it legally. And Dan O'Dowd said, Tesla full self driving is level 4. It's in the name. Homar's blog and other YouTubers have their hands off the wheel and feet off the pedals for an hour as FSD drives them through the city. How is that not autonomous? And honestly, I kind of agree with him. I think it is actually a lot closer to a driverless system than people recognize. All you have to do is really turn off the DMS. Then another post is from Phil Koopman. He says, if you really look at the language of the SAE, they say it is the intent of the system that makes it level 2 or level 4. So you can, have a human supervisor in a Waymo. Like, it's common to see Waymos on the highway with a human supervisor, but that doesn't make it a level 2 system. It's just a level 4 system that's being supervised. So mostly I think the SAE levels are kind of nonsense. If you want me to tell you, like, when I think you could have a driverless Tesla, I mean, this is obviously just something I'm guessing. Nobody knows. but I wouldn't be surprised to see it within 12 to 24 months.
Sawyer, do you agree with that? Driverless in 12 to 24 months? Earlier, we talked 20% probability of driverless this year, so less than likely,
I,
but
I, I tend to be more
that's more than,
conservative.
I think that's more than what the market is giving Tesla credit for, obviously.
Oh yeah, like the market gives it basically nothing. I tend to be more conservative, but 12 to 18, maybe 18, yeah.
I got the actual information right there. So I live in China before, so we all know BYD, right? So BYD just released like a new version of EV. It costs like nearly by $10,000. Exactly like ten
Is that
thousand
the
dollars.
Seagull?
Yeah, it's a EV. It's so cheap that cause like in a lot of news and articles, what I read out is the competition in like 2024. The EV is going to be really like heavy. We all know that Tesla got the software that BYD doesn't, but I feel like the like this kind of a competition will make the margin goes down. Like again, I think. What do you think about the EV for the BYD new version? It costs like $10,000.
I mean, I think there's a huge market at the lower price points. So Tesla's next gen platform is going to be really important there. But Tesla has one power that everyone doesn't have as they're fighting on margin. They have the ability to potentially make money from software and services. And if they can do that, if they can, for example, launch FSD beta in Europe and China, that could give them the flexibility to outcompete anybody else in the price war and come up on top. And frankly, a lot of these brands are going to die, right? So that's how the price war is going to end. Many people will die, or many companies will die, especially in China. There's many companies that have very few sales. They're going to die. There's going to be consolidation. There's going to be some mergers and acquisitions. And eventually it'll coalesce into fewer number of major players. And then prices will kind of stabilize. Or really the dynamics of the market may change entirely with autonomy. So this is going to be brutal. I mean, legacy automakers are suffering, startups are suffering. This is a cutthroat environment, especially in China. And it's going to bleed over into the rest of the world markets because you have this ultra competitive environment in China. You have slowing growth in many ways. They're going to increasingly be looking, and BYD is already doing this, exporting into Europe, exporting into South America, and eventually exporting into the United States through Mexico as well.
Sawyer, what do we know about this $11,000 BYD vehicle?
I personally don't know much about it.
Yeah, I saw a price out there the other day too, but I never seen a post about it or an ad about it or specs. Look, what do you know about the $11,000 BYD?
I didn't check the details for the EV, but what I read out is that it just costs like $11,000 or $10,000, and it's yeah, we all know it doesn't have any FSD or software, but like it's cheap and it will like just as Omar said, it's clear that they didn't have any margin. They may even bleeding or lose money, which Tesla will stand out. But the thing is, as long as this competition goes, uh, the Tesla margins will, I think, might be decreasing. So if we frankly saying about this, but this is something that like shareholder doesn't want to see on the report earning or something
Okay,
like
so
that.
hold on one second. So my question to you was, what do you know about $11,000? And you kind of reverted back to your original point. So BYD's, here's the headline I see from 7 hours ago. Okay. BYD's new $11,000 plug-in hybrid sedan. So is it a plug-in hybrid or is it BEV?
it's pretty good, I think, on the review, but it's
No,
not start
is it
selling yet.
the question is it a plug-in hybrid or a full electric vehicle? BYD is shaking up the Chinese automotive market with its latest offering for budget-conscious buyers, the Keen Plus DMI plug-in hybrid, with a starting price of 79,800 yuan, roughly $11,000. It stands out as one of the most competitively priced PHEVs in its segment and beyond.
Excuse me, can you say that question again? I didn't reach out.
Okay, so let's try to find more detail on this, and then we can revisit the topic. Electric published BYD Keen Plus EV at $15,000, kicks off price war with ICE. So hybrid is 11,000, full electric 15,000, and the 11,000 version has 74-mile NEDC all electric range, so it's not really comfortable. And then the Keen Plus EV ranges from $15,000 $200 to $19,000 $400. $19,400. So thank you. You got at EV.com. The all-electric version includes an electric motor with up to 134 horsepower. It will be offered with either 48 kilowatt-hour or 57.6 kilowatt-hour battery.
Did you say
260.
48 kilowatt hour battery for $11,000? The
No,
BEV has got to be
no.
more expensive.
$11,000 is a hybrid vehicle. Okay, so that only has a few dozen pure EV range on EPA, and on NEDC cycle 74 miles. Okay, so forget that one. That's not really competition, I don't think, for Tesla. I mean, it's a plug-in hybrid. You know, the $15,000 version has 48 kilowatt-hour battery, 261 miles of CLTC range, so low 200s for EPA. Okay, and then the larger battery, 57.6 kilowatt hours, costs $19,000, and that has 316 CLTC range. So I'm probably missing a couple of airbags. So basically, everybody is kind of repeating this $11,000 BYD EV, but that's plug-in hybrid. So we got to get our facts right.
What's the starting price of the pure BEV version?
$15,000. 15,000. That has the 47 kilowatt hour battery. Okay. No oomph on the motor.
Probably no fast charging.
Yeah, probably no fast charging.
Probably the safety standards of a bicycle.
Of course, exactly.
But $15,000, you know, you need to sell some city taxi cabs or something. You know, maybe you can make a deal with them.
Yeah, they probably couldn't sell that in US, right?
Not without major changes. I mean, even minor things like headlight colors require changes for US homologation. So, but they are exporting some of these models into Europe. Not every model, but certain models. But when you look at the European prices, they're much higher than what you can get in mainland China.
I see AI driver in the audience. If he wants to come up to speaker, we can talk V12.2 with those who have it. V12.2.1. Omar Gabriel asks in the replies, when will FSD 12 have a wider release?
When will it have a wider release?
Yeah, like when will everyone in the US get it?
My understanding is that it's rolling out to everybody now. So you don't need to be in an early access group. You don't need to know anybody. Anybody with FSD can be randomly selected. And indeed, random people who none of us have even heard of have been randomly selected. So they may have to pause and fix certain issues. They may release a new build from time to time, depending on the data they're getting back from the fleet. But if all goes well, within a few weeks, everybody should be moved from version 11 to version 12. This is really going out to everybody, as they mentioned on the earnings call.
So if someone subscribes to it today, which version are they getting?
They'll have 11 on their car installed, but once they subscribe, they'll be put in the queue to get 12. So go ahead and subscribe. If you haven't tried FSD in a while, go give it a shot. $200, or you can refer one person and get 3 free months and see if you like 12 better.
Does anyone here have a Cybertruck? I'd love to hear like the surprises and just how sick that thing is. Guess not.
I'm trying
I
to
don't.
bring AI driver up, but apparently the button isn't working. So we're trying to figure out some technical issues right now, Joshua.
Yeah, man, I don't have mine yet, but I drove it for like 30 minutes if you want me to address the question, but I don't know if
Go
it's
ahead,
Yeah,
necessary.
please.
please, please. I haven't even seen one. Because I live here in Sweden, but I ordered one like the first hour or something the same day, and I should be like super high on the list. But yeah, I'm just dying to hear anything about it.
Yeah, I don't know how long it's going to take to get to Sweden, but it was an incredible driving experience. The 48-volt architecture is, allows for steer by wire, which creates a very uh, not truck-like experience. So the ability to change lanes, like the rear steering, allows for this just very smooth, quick, unnatural. It's better than a three, a Y, an X, or an S in terms of lane change feel, and uh, turning into a driveway, 90-degree turn. It's it's unreal is what it is for the size of vehicle that it is. So very tight turning radius, uh, quiet. Although the tires that were on it were the Foundation series, so they were the performance tires, so they're a little louder because they seem to be knobby. Um, and But it's a very quiet cabin, very spacious. You could see they don't have the issues with the tonneau cover like you saw with that other vehicle. The storage is good. for what it is. My main concern with it is that not having FSD uh, might be a decision making issue if I get my VIN. Omar, you got your VIN. Are you fine taking it without FSD, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it without FSD. I have no doubt that they're going to ship FSD for it. So if you'll have to drive it a little bit without autopilot and FSD while they validate it, that's fine.
I'd like to ask a question about the comfort of the seats. I drive a Y, and they're very comfortable seats, and I just wondered, are the seats more like the new S and X, or are they kind of a hybrid between the S and X and the 3 and Y?
It's a whole new thing. And they're great seats. They're very comfortable.
Nice.
I mean, arguably, they're the best seats out of any of the vehicles, I think. It's definitely the most comfortable vehicle to be in that Tesla makes.
I sat in the new Highland 3. Are they any similar to those seats, or is it just on another level?
I mean, they're just different seats. You kind of just have to sit in it and, form your own opinion. But I think pretty much everyone who has one has kind of mentioned it. They've said, "Oh, the seats are great. It's super comfortable. There's tons of space in here." Those are kind of some of the best points of the vehicle, I think.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too. I just watched one review. It was Telios EV, and I believe it was his wife, and she sat in the car, and the first thing she said was, "Oh my gosh, the seats are so hard," and I was like, "What?" And like all the comments were like, "This is totally, I've sat in it. It's great," and I was just that was the only thing that concerned me because my dad's getting he's waiting on his VIN right now. We're in North Carolina, but we're waiting on the VIN.
We're still trying to figure out AI drivers. I don't think the web version allows speaker mode on Spaces, so you just need to join through the app.
Yeah, it would be great to hear his thoughts and anybody else who got FSD 12, if you could request to speak. I'd love to just hear what people are experiencing and what they think about the new software.
Yeah. If anybody in the audience has V12.2.1, please request to speak. Share your thoughts, which version you had before, how does it differ, any edge cases that have been solved with this version. Omar, did you see AI drivers clip talking about how FSD now handles dips as well as speed bumps?
Yeah, thank God. This one is one that I've really wanted to see for a long time. It never handled dips before, and now it not only handles dips and speed bumps, but also even just rough patches of the road and bumpy parts of the road.
There he is. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going? Sorry, the
Oh,
amount of
wow. Your
computer
mic.
issues.
Yeah, that's okay, man. I mean, we've been running. Everybody's on. Most people here on their app. I don't think the web version allows speaker mode. But anyway, how is V12.2.1 for you?
It's definitely a mixed bag. I'm super excited to have it, and it's showing some real promise. And some of the stuff I've had it do is just absolute insanity. It's definitely feeling like a human behind the wheel and not like a robot anymore. I brought it. The first thing I did is bring it to Costco, and it just blew me away. It was absolutely incredible. I'm working on uploading that video right now. I've been battling computer and editing issues all day, but it should be out pretty soon for people to see.
All right, that's good. Thanks for joining. Good night. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. How is it different from the version that you tested with Omar a couple of weeks ago?
There is one problem with it that has been pretty consistent for me, especially down like long open country roads, and that is that it seems to have a real hard time maintaining speed, especially if there's no lead car. If there's somebody in front of you, it seems to do a pretty good job of just following them. But if there's just a wide open road, it'll kind of slow down and speed up, pretty like wildly sometimes. And I think that's probably why we're getting so many mixed opinions of version 12, because I think it really depends on where you live, to whether you're going to have a good or bad experience and how many roads like that you have. But
Have you
it
tried it with the
definitely,
auto speed offset off?
yeah, I actually have, and I had the same problem. I mean, it still just was going very, very slow. Like it would even be going down to like 30 miles an hour in a 50 sometimes. I mean, you can always override the accelerator pedal, but I'd imagine, if somebody just jumps in and that's their first experience, they'd be like, oh, wow, this is way worse than version 11. But it almost feels like the last 1% of issues that version 11 had that I thought were going to take forever to get fixed are all fixed. And not only just fixed, but it handles them extremely well. But the most basic of driving tasks, version 12 seems to struggle with a little bit, at least for now. I didn't experience any of that when I was riding shotgun with you. And I think this is probably something that just needs to get trained out of it. Um, but yeah, it's just, it's so weird that these are the problems that it's having to me. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I haven't seen any issue where it has trouble driving straight, but what I did see in my first few drives is that it felt like it was just going a little bit too slow and hesitating compared to the prior build. It was like a 25 and it was going like 15, 17, 20, and it was like, "Huh? Why is it going so slow?" So that I feel like was something that 12.1.2 wasn't doing, that 12.2.1 started doing. So I'm not sure if maybe it's extra cautious. They dialed up the cautiousness because they are going wide, or whether it's some sort of issue with how they train the model or something. It's picking up some false positive or something like that. But I've definitely noticed a little bit of the same thing. It was a little bit better at night when there was less traffic. But my first few drives, like that was the first takeaway I posted right away was it's kind of driving like a grandma.
Yeah, I would say grandma driver is a great way to put it. It drives like somebody who's like scared of driving, who just watched a bunch of like, when you get your license and they make you watch those videos of like, this is what happens if you speed and you'll die. It's like it's watched 1,000 of those videos and it's just terrified to go quickly now. But goddamn, is it doing some incredible moves. I mean, like at a red light, it pulled out, doing a right on red, it pulled out when there was still approaching cars in neighboring lanes, just because the one, our target lane was clear. Like while the cars were going, it's just, man, it's doing some stuff that I just didn't think we were going to see for such a long time. And I don't know how much parking lot testing you've done, but I think we're going to see actually smart summon very, very soon.
That's amazing. When you say it's doing things that you didn't think that was going to be done for a while, that last mile you're talking about, can you give more examples of that, please?
Yeah, it's kind of like accounting for things that I didn't think, or that I thought may have not been completely visible on the cameras. So things like the dip that I posted, that is something that I drive pretty consistently, that road, and I have to take over every time because every single version just goes full speed through there. And not only does version 12 slow down appropriately, but it handles it like perfectly. Like slows down to a really nice speed, goes a consistent speed over the bump, and then accelerates right after. Like it's just it's not doing it justice just to say that, oh, it can do that now, because of how much better it can do it. It's like, it is wild. It's something you kind of need to feel in the car, but the way it brakes and accelerates and stuff just feels really nice.
Thank you. Joey, I pinned at the top the dip that AI driver is talking about. He has a clip in there of a few seconds, and it shows perfectly how the car handles that dip.
Yeah, I had something similar that AI driver reminded me of. I turn left into my apartment, and there's a big dip after I turn left. And normally I just disengage right away when it's trying to get in that left lane, because it does it like it just like fails right away. But I let it do it. It switched into the left lane, which it wasn't able to do. And then it churned into my parking lot and slowed down for the big dip into my parking lot, and then it made a left smoothly towards my gate, and if my gate wasn't closing, I think it would have made it through the gate. So that was like the most impressive thing that I witnessed on my drive.
Thank you, Joey. Josh? Okay, Josh dropped. AI driver, how do you feel about the nags? How frequent they are? The fact that you can't use the scroll wheel anymore?
To be honest, I haven't noticed much of a difference. I pretty much always just keep pressure on the wheel, which allows me to, makes me more comfortable to push the car as much as I want to push it. But I haven't really noticed a big difference as far as like it being extra naggy or anything, to be honest. I know others have, but they probably are just using it a little differently than I am.
Gotcha. Joey?
So I only use the scroll wheel when I drive, and I was still able to do it. Does anybody know why?
And you have V12.2.1, right?
Yeah, I'd still
Which
just
wheel were you using?
the left one.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, the volume. Normally, like, because I don't like doing the wheel, like, to feel it. So I just am constantly scrolling on my scroll wheel, the volume up and down when I drive.
That's what I do too on 11.4.9. That's why I was a little sad to hear that you couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, it still
Yeah,
lets
I'll have
you
to
do it.
test that out because it could be that it just has something to do with the auto set speed.
AI driver, you said you've been editing all day?
No, I've been battling my computer all day. It's been an insane amount of work for not a very long video. I really wanted to get something like I actually I stayed up pretty late last night getting something done, and pretty much the entire day. I mean, I've been out most of the day, but my entire evening has been spent trying to get this video to save properly. So,
Yeah. Now that I started my own YouTube channel, I definitely appreciate the amount of work, which I always did, but it's insane. Like this morning, I spent like 10 hours trying to shave down the recording of these spaces by like another minute. It's crazy. It's wild. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing right now?
oh, I know, it can be an insane time suck for sure.
So you think you're gonna get it out by tomorrow?
Oh, I'll have it out tonight. It's
Oh, tonight.
I'm at the point where it's rendering. Yeah, I don't expect this to get, this isn't my usual setup. I don't have the third person view, so not a huge amount of effort went into this video, but I want to just release something.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been checking your page. We're all waiting for it.
I know, I have a feeling it's going to be disappointing for people, but it does show everything that I talk about, and some pretty dang incredible moves. And I can't wait to get back out and go to like Berkeley and stuff and my usual testing routes. That's where I think we're going to see a massive improvement.
I mean, every single one of your videos have been extremely high quality. I can't imagine people being disappointed. Like, how can people show their appreciation for your work?
Like and subscribe, bro.
Like and smash that like button.
Smash that like button.
Exactly. It does actually help, by the way. It helps a lot, actually, the like button, in terms
Oh,
of.
and open up 20 incognito tabs and have a video of mine playing on each one. That'll help me too.
Oh, really? Is that right? If one browser has 20 tabs playing the same video from the same computer, no way. Doesn't the
Oh
IP
no,
address?
I mean, I don't know if things have changed, but that's how I got my initial watch hours.
Why didn't you tell me this 2,500 hours ago? I would have done that.
You're gonna get it any day now anyway. You'll be all right.
Yeah, I think it's coming up. All right. Omar, I see you pinned something at the top.
Yeah, just another guy with V12.
Wasabi says, something I haven't seen mentioned yet. FSD V12 just pulled into my driveway and stopped in exactly the right spot when I got home. It's such a small thing, but it blows my mind.
Looks like he's in the space if you want to invite him up.
So yeah, he's welcome to come up. Wasabi, just request to speak. When there's so many people, it's hard for me to find the person. I don't know how they do it in these big spaces with like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in there. How do they find the people to come up, or they just request to speak before anybody
There's a
else?
search. You can click on the little people thing, and then there's a search in the top right.
Oh, wow. That's the first. Boom. I did not know that. Wasabi, welcome.
Hi. Yeah. So yeah, to my great surprise, I got V12 this morning, and I did a initial drive and was kind of disappointed with the performance of it. It kind of thought everything was a speed bump and was crawling through my neighborhood at like 7 miles an hour. But just this afternoon, I had to go to Walnut Creek for an appointment, and it was like a 15-mile drive each way, and zero interventions both ways. And when I got home, I know that it would like pull over to the side of the road when you get to your destination. So I wanted to see what it would do in this case. So I just kind of let it go. But when I got to my house, like it turned the turn signal on, it pulled into my driveway. My garage door opened automatically, and it pulled up like right up to the entrance of the garage door and then stopped. And I'm just sitting there stunned because it has never done that before.
Wow.
Wasabi, is there anything that if V12 hasn't solved for you?
So the automatic speed management, I think definitely needs some work. I've never really experienced what I think some people would call phantom braking before, um, but I do definitely feel it with this release. It's like it can't really pick a speed. Um, it's going either a little bit too slow or like a little bit too fast. It is definitely better. There is this road nearby me that has like a 25 mile an hour work zone that's been there for years, and there's never any work going on, and people blow past it at like 60 miles an hour. And basically, if I was using V11, it's a recipe to basically get rear-ended. But V12 just kind of almost ignored the speed limit signs and stayed with the flow of traffic very well. There was also like a dip in the road that it detected and slowed down properly for. Um, Overall, I'm very very impressed, but the automatic speed management could use a little bit more uh, smoothness in, yeah, just picking a speed and sticking with it.
Thank you. AI driver, I asked you the same question a few months ago, and you had said turn signals. Do you still feel the same?
Oh, turn signals are so much better with version 12. It is hugely better. I wouldn't say they're absolutely perfect yet, but I would say it's like at least 10 times better than they used to be. 100%. Like, it wasn't something that I ever even thought about during my drives, or even in the video like that I just made. It never even crossed my mind. So that's how good they've gotten.
If you could direct the Tesla AI team to work on one thing for you, what would you direct them?
I think it's just gonna be what everybody else has been saying currently about version 12, which is the speed management, because it can go um, much too slow, and I've also had it go much too quickly as well. I think it would feel better if it was a little bit more consistent. But like I said, I don't think this was as big of a problem with the last version 12 release. This feels like something brand new, so I have high hopes that they're going to get that taken care of pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was seeing it and everyone else is mentioning it, but we've already seen V12 without really having the issue as prominent. So I'm hoping it is something that they're able to resolve relatively quickly. And then we're just sort of, stunned by how smooth it is.
Another question in the replies asking about wipers. Did you guys see any change in the performance of all the wipers?
They're just as bad as ever, if not worse.
Yeah, I second that. I would say they're worse if that was even possible.
So one of the things that's going on in the background here is they've also moved to an end-to-end model for wipers. Before, what they were doing is actually detecting individual raindrops with like an object detector and then trying to like classify that into the wiper speed. Now they have this sort of end-to-end model that just looks at all the cameras and tries to output the right sort of wiper commands. So they just launched the first version of this end-to-end wiper system, and they've got the second version of this end-to-end model for the wiper system that they're going to ship. So some people have noticed it getting worse in some ways. I kind of feel like it has been a little more annoying to me lately. That's kind of, I think, because they moved to this end-to-end model. So I'm hopeful end-to-end work for the car. Maybe you can solve the wiper issue too. But I really hope that second update's pretty good because it's been raining a lot here in California, and it's frustrating when there's light drizzle and it's not turning on, or there's really heavy rain and it's not wiping fast enough. It can be really, scary. You can't see anything. And then you have to go and try and adjust it manually, but then you have to turn it off. We shouldn't even be having this discussion. So I would almost say just declare failure if this doesn't get better soon with the end-to-end windshield wiper model and say, look, we shit the bed. It's been 6 years and people are still complaining about this. So just put the little water sensor in there and use it as a set of labels to generate really good training data. And then maybe you can make the Pure Vision ones work from that. But it's like, what? Not more than $10. It's another production step. But they shouldn't be something that is even a discussion point in the car. It should just be something that just works. Now, the funny thing is, the FSD can actually drive even when the windshield isn't being wiped at all, which is kind of interesting. But it's scary for the driver because they don't have visibility.
AI driver, do you recommend people, your friends and colleagues and family, do you recommend them subscribe to FSD or purchase it?
That's kind of a tough one. I would say it matters how many or how much you drive your car and where you're doing it. I would say for now, I would probably recommend subscribing rather than forking out over $12,000 just to see if this is an experiment that you want to be part of. But I can imagine that changing in the not so distant future based off what I've seen with version 12, where I really think, like, in just a few updates, this will be something that you can really use and rely on. pretty consistently. So that'll, if that happens and it becomes like the best driver assist in the world, which I guess it already is, but if it gets to the point where it's like doing everything correctly and it's super smooth and it's an easy recommend for to buy it for 12,000. But currently, while it's still in the science experiment phase, I think try it out for a month or two.
Do you think the software getting so good that it can handle 99.99% of your miles gonna be enough, or do you think that milestone will wait? People take rate increasing will wait until either the beta label is removed or the nags are removed or some sort of a more concrete milestone.
I don't know if there's any concrete milestone like that. I mean, I guess there could be for some people because everybody has their preferences. Some people like the nags really upset them. My main thing is once the car starts, like once you start not paying attention to what it's doing and it just does things and it feels good, that's when I think the take rate is going to go up because there's a lot of people who I show full self driving to, and the second it makes a mistake or like a harsh brake or weird steering input, they're like, oh yeah, I would never use this because it feels so kind of like robotic, you know. But once that's no longer the case and it's driving around like a good limousine driver, and it's like yeah, I think it's going to be a completely different ballgame.
And you think that's possible this year?
Yeah, man. Now that AI has taken over the world, nothing is impossible anymore.
Impossible is nothing, says AI driver. Omar, you agree with all that?
Yeah.
Wasabi, what about you? Now that you have V12.2.1, do you agree in a few updates it can handle 99 point most of your miles?
Um,
That it becomes usable for an average owner?
I personally think version 11 was kind of already there. Because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's kind of like, I see a lot of people like commenting on Omar's videos saying like, oh, if only it worked like that. It does work like that for me. um, so yeah, I do. The thing about V12 is just like the overall smoothness, and as people have been calling, passing the wife test. So I think with that, definitely in a couple of versions, we're going to see a lot of edge cases ironed out, and yeah, I think this year we're going to see major changes.
Okay. Omar, there's a question, or more of a statement, and I want to see if you agree with this. Tim says, wipers are never going to get great because of how poor the cameras are at seeing rain on the windshield. It's why autopilot doesn't struggle as bad as humans in misty conditions. They're going to need a dedicated sensor.
No, I don't agree. I think it's absolutely possible to train a model that can control the windshield wipers extremely well using the cameras on the car. So, we've trained deep learning models to beat the best StarCraft player in the world, the best Go player in the world. We've trained a model to drive the damn car, right? So you can get the windshield wipers to work too. Some people say, well, the camera's too close to the windshield, but there's also a camera inside the car. So the camera inside the car could theoretically even look out the window, out of the side windows, out of the rear window, and see raindrops, right? You have microphones on the car. You could listen. They could absolutely get it to work, but it's just not been a priority for them, apparently. They've been trying to get the car to drive itself. And now we're in this bizarre situation where the car can drive itself really well and get from point A to point B, curb to curb with no intervention sometimes, but the wipers don't work. Tim Zaman, who used to work on the autopilot team, even had a tweet out and he said, I think they're going to solve self driving before they get the wipers to work at this pace, which is really kind of a bizarre situation, but here we are.
Yeah, I think the cameras, I mean, it's not just the rain on the window, right? I mean, the camera can look out and see that the road is shiny. And also, since all Teslas are internet connected, it can load the current weather for your current location. So I think
Absolutely, yeah.
it can have a pretty good idea if uh, it's raining or it's going to rain or what you're seeing is probably rain. Um, and also, like, regardless of whether or not there's a window, you can still kind of look outside and see some obstructed visibility that looks like rain. So it doesn't necessarily have to be droplets in front of the camera that triggers the wipers. There's a lot that can go into that, and if you plug all those things into a model, I think you can solve it.
Yeah, I mean, deep learning is a really powerful tool for this because you don't have to tell it, look out the window or do this or do that. You just say, here's the cameras, figure it out yourself. And it can look at some really subtle distortion of the lens from the water drops or whatever, totally not what you would look for. And it can pick up what it needs to do. So I think the end to end framework is a good framework for this. I think this is definitely not an impossible problem. And there's enough people complaining about this that they've dedicated the resources to solve it. It just hasn't been something they've really worked on before. Now they're shipping the end to end model. Some people are sort of noticing it getting worse. But I don't think it's impossible. I think if they got the car to drive this well, they can probably get the auto wipers to be acceptable. So what we can do is we can give them training data. Every time the wipers are shitty, turn off the auto wipers and set the speed yourself. And that'll give them some labels they can use to improve the system.
Any questions for the three V12.2.1 users that are on the board? Please request to speak. Any questions for V12.2.1 as AI driver edits, processes, uploads, processes to high definition? Did you find a way to speed that up, AI driver, at all? Or do you just watch it like I do?
No, I watch it very intensely, and sometimes that makes it go faster.
Why does it sometimes it upgrades to HD, process the HD, and then sometimes it just leaves it at standard definition?
Oh, I've never had that before. Usually it's pretty quick to go from regular to HD for me.
So you're telling me that's a unique problem that I have? I'll look into that. Any questions? Jet Setter asks, how are the U-turns? Is it nailing the U-turns every single time? Has it missed one once yet?
I mean, maybe others people can speak in regards to that, but I've only really done that one, and that one was caused by a bad navigation route. But what impressed me the most was just how confident it was through the whole thing. Because we have seen older versions do U turns. Like, I think I remember version 9, like, I remember forcing it to do a U turn by overriding the accelerator pedal. But, like, if you look at all those videos, the car almost seems like it doesn't know it's doing a U-turn. The steering wheel's just jerky. It feels very unnatural. But the way this one felt was just on a completely different level. Like if you go and watch the video, it slows down. It goes to like a very consistent 6 miles an hour, and it just stays at 6 miles an hour through the entire turn. No unnecessary movements of the steering wheel. Even when the car was directly facing the curb, where it was just a few feet away from it and there was very low visibility around, it just continued through it, like, just like it was no problem at all. So it was a vastly different experience than any other version.
Yeah, I haven't come across any U-turns yet. I've only been testing it today, and there aren't that many opportunities. But definitely want to mention the overall smoothness and confidence is definitely a big change, especially like setting off accelerating after stop signs or like when you get a green light. Like instead of just kind of inching or like lunging forward, the car actually accelerates the way a person would, the way a person with a Tesla would, right? It's just a lot more confident.
Omar, we have a question for you in the replies from Kishore. Why do the auto wipers need to be AI controlled at all? It's a part that costs a few cents. We never got an explanation why Tesla is adamant on solving it using AI, risking poor user experience for years.
Well, the best part is no part. Why put a part when you cannot put a part? That was the thinking behind it. Now you can say this was moronic thinking because the cost benefit of putting this $10 sensor compared to getting this to work is huge. I mean, they probably spend millions training this model, right? So you can maybe question that decision and you may be right, but that's what they've chosen to do. That's their sort of philosophy. Don't put anything unnecessary on the car. Eliminate that step from the production line. Eliminate that part. One less thing that can break. If you think about it in really pure terms, people aren't going to be driving the car. The vision system's going to be driving the car. So the wiper should be controlled by making sure the vision system can see. That's at least in theory, what they were thinking. In reality, we're driving manually and we're like, what the fuck? Why doesn't this thing work? So, I think they'll probably get it to work, honestly, pretty well. But if they can't, then yeah, they should absolutely just admit failure and put a sensor in there. And that could even generate training data for the pure vision cars.
All right. I'm definitely getting to a point where I'm going to fall asleep as the host with 400 people in the space. So let's see what Keon has to say. I believe Keon has V12.2.1 too. Omar, I'm going to make you co-host in case I actually do fall asleep. Keon?
Hey guys, thanks. No, I unfortunately still have the 11, but I just subscribed. I think it was on Sunday night, or it could have been Saturday night. Super excited, by the way. I can go into that, but I won't. I think FSD 12 is more exciting, obviously. But
What
overall,
made you pull the trigger?
I just knew I was gonna do it for like 2 months, but like we were traveling a lot, and so I was like, I gotta wait till I get back home. But it's been something that been really excited about, and honestly inspired by these two guys up here, AI Driver and Omar. To be honest, got myself a GoPro, and I've just been experimenting so far. And my goal is to educate and show people what this thing can do as well. I think it's remarkable.
Okay, great. Thanks for
But
sharing.
I
Yep.
think, yeah, and just on the other note too, it's like going back to the windshield wipers. It's funny, like my wife is like overly critical about the windshield wipers, but only like because she knows that this car can practically drive itself. So she's has the same question. How come they can figure one out but not the other? It's a good question, but I'm wondering, like, is there anyone else that solved this? Like, is is there a benefit for Tesla to kind of run this as an experiment, with all the data and say, hey, this is something kind of novel, it's never been done using vision? Or is that, totally out of the question? Because it's kind of funny, right? It's like really like the only manual thing I ever need to change on the car. And I like think back to like my old cars. I'm like, damn, I had to like, twist a knob or push a button, for a command. So yeah, any thoughts there? Am I overthinking it?
Omar, what do you think?
I don't think there's really that much to discuss. The windshield wipers. Is there any benefit to doing it with AI? Not really. That's why nobody does it. So, in theory, it makes sense. In practice, it doesn't actually work. So, I'm just hoping they ship an update and they make it work. They say there's an update coming. So, maybe we can return to this discussion topic after the new auto wipers update and see if it's actually made things better or not. I think Yunta Sai from the autopilot team, he tweets about this stuff. So he responded to someone and said that we've got to update shipping soon for the auto wipers with the new end-to-end model.
I've only had, the Tesla for like 2 years, but I do think it is hella funny that they don't work. And I don't mind. It's not a big deal to me, but I
It's
think it's pretty
ironic for
funny.
sure. It's very ironic.
Yeah, it's like too ironic.
Yeah, there's definitely some element of like when all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and Tesla has this AI hammer. So
I mean, another funny thing is that it's always worked for me. I've never had an auto wiper issue.
it's always kind of worked for me. I mean, there's definitely a lot of times where there's more rain on the windshield than I would probably like. But like if I look down at the center screen and just sanity check what the car can see, it can still see everything, and I can still see perfectly well enough to, be confident in being able to take over if it sees anything weird. Um, I've been driving at night in pouring rain and I can't see the lines on the road like whatsoever. But if I look down at the screen, FSD is like, I got this, right? Um, and I turn on FSD and it drives me the whole way home with no intervention. And I pretty much can only see other cars' taillights.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
true.
It's like superhuman. Kian?
It's pretty nuts. I was going on like a zero intervention drive yesterday, like 2 times, and one of them I got on film, and I was so pissed because the guy in front of me for like no reason had road rage and just decided to like start backing up like out of nowhere into this spot, and he's looking at me like super pissed off and like yelling out the window, and I was engaged in FSD, and I was like, what is this thing gonna do, and obviously I'm really focused on it. And then I just found out in that moment that it doesn't reverse, and I think I knew that, but I still wanted to test it out because I didn't know if that it's applicable to V12 or like the late version of 11. And so I kind of just flipped him off, honestly. And my wife's sitting there and she's like, Keon, like, what the hell? I don't like when you get confrontations with people. But she's really calm and cool. She knows my personality. And, I wasn't either. But this guy basically just like ruined this entire drive. Like it was like from Balboa Island, which is like this super beautiful place, all the way back to like South County and Orange County. And I just had to share that experience with you guys and let you know that in a small island, it can navigate super well with like like heavily populated and like kind of like a dense area. So and that's V11. I think .4.9 if I'm not mistaken, but it's really good. I think I'm disengaging myself when I don't need to because I'm just kind of learning the car. So it's like forced disengagements. But I've probably been driving with 25% of the time in the last 3 or 4 days, and I'm just like, wow, this is pretty nuts that it's only 2024. Like I can't imagine what it's going to be like in, I don't know, 6 to 18 months.
I mean, with that positivity, are you considering buying the software, or are you gonna stick with subscribing for now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I'm totally cool with subscribing. At least I think there's like a period that I want to kind of go through to see, and like I want to see how like committed I am. Because like, I'm young, like I do like to drive. I think like, I like fast cars. I like to, race and have spirited driving. Um so I think I have to like critically evaluate like the immediate value add to me. Um, but yeah, for the time being, like I'm really excited around the subscription.
So you have a Tesla and also BMW, right?
Yes, 2 BMWs.
2 BMWs. Did you get FSD on those yet? No.
No chance.
Are you going to replace one of them with the Model 3 Performance, the new one that's coming out?
I apologize if it cuts out. I'll start with that, but I don't know if I would sell them. That's kind of like part of me, like who I am is like a car enthusiast at heart.
All right. I guess we'll see an update later on. You may change your mind after Model 3 Performance actually comes out. 700 horsepower, they say. 700 horsepower is the rumor, but um, we'll see. It's just a rumor right now with one source.
Sorry, guys. I think it probably cut me off.
That's okay.
I think
All
one
right. Any
thing
other
they can do to immediately increase the take rate is if they added it to your account. If you could just pay one $12,000 thing and have it on your account, I think people would be way more likely to purchase it. And I know this has been kind of beat to death, but I think that's something that they should probably consider doing.
Yeah, I mean, there are many things they can do to increase the take rate. By they can lower the price, they can make it permanently transferable to other vehicles, or they can just make it work, and then take rate will go up. Wasabi?
Yeah. I mean, any way you slice it, $12,000 for a consumer software product is a really hard pill to swallow. I mean, if that means like lifetime subscription and you can transfer it to any Tesla, or even if Tesla eventually licenses FSD to other automakers and you can transfer it there, then yeah, I think that would definitely kind of change things. But as things stand right now, I've heard of um, people's Teslas getting totaled and insurance not factoring in the cost of FSD in the replacement car. Um, so I hope that doesn't happen. Thankfully, I bought FSD outright, and it's part of the invoice for the car when I bought it. But um, I think like if I had added it on as like a software update, like insurance doesn't cover software, so it's like it's almost like you're better off subscribing to it unless you buy it outright with the car, and the high cost doesn't make the return on investment worth it. I mean, especially if you're somebody to get a new car every 3, 4, 5 years.
Looks like Omar agrees. All right. Any other questions, comments for the speaker board? We have 3 people. We have V12.2.1.
I gotta hop off. It's been a pleasure talking to you all, though, and
So is the
thanks
video
for.
is the video coming out now?
Yeah, it's uploading. Expected in like half hour. And
All
thanks
right.
for saying I
Sweet. Thanks for
inspired you,
coming.
Kian. Oh yeah, anytime. Talk to you guys later.
All right. Take care. We have a new speaker. Probably a question for Omar. Tabs, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep. What's your question?
For those that have V12, I don't know if this has been asked yet, but what that has come to V12 that wasn't in V11 has blown your mind the most so far?
Hmm. I mean, it's hard to really pick one thing. What really blew me away is how many things it did better and how much better it did them. We've never seen that from one update. Maybe an update will improve one thing or make something else worse. But I've never seen an update where these issues that I just had in every single build for years, and you just accept that FSD is just never going to do it correctly. And all of a sudden it just works. And not just one of these issues, but dozens of them. I mean, the way it goes around stop cars, when there's stop cars, this is an issue where frequently with FSD, if you weren't careful, you could end up getting stuck. Let's say there's an Amazon van in one of the lanes. You could easily get stuck behind it here in San Francisco. And then you got this annoying situation. Now you're waiting 2 minutes for all the traffic to pass so you can get out, disengage FSD, and then get back. It's very annoying. So it's really good at changing lanes. It can change lanes. The old FSD, you had to have this super big gap. You had to have like the length of a football field between you and the next car for it to actually have the balls to go and change its lanes. Now it can be aggressive. It can like get in front of people. It can peek over into the lane and then come back and then complete the lane change. Like it's just so much more human like, and so many little things like this where you didn't even notice FSD was doing it wrong. You didn't even notice how robotic it was. Like, for example, with pedestrians, when let's say it has to make a right turn and there's pedestrians crossing, it just sits there at the line like a fucking robot and just waits. And all the pedestrians in San Francisco are taking their time, they're laughing, walking. Now one pedestrian's exited the crosswalk, but another pedestrian's entering the crosswalk, and you're just fucking waiting there forever because it's driving like a robot. They're not even thinking about you because you're just sitting there and everybody's going, they're not letting you go. With V12, it just kind of creeps up. And even though there's pedestrians going, it doesn't run them over, but it kind of creeps up, just showing everyone, hey, I'm trying to go. And it makes space and it goes. Even if there's another pedestrian coming, it doesn't freak out just because someone's entering the crosswalk on the other side. It actually knows, okay, I can make it through and I'm not going to have any issue with this pedestrian. So just so many different things that it just does so much more naturally, and just, the lack of sort of jerkiness, um like crazy random moves that don't make any sense. Um yeah. You really kind of just have to feel it for yourself to get it.
So it's just had one really big confidence boost then, right?
I mean, they've literally just thrown away the old system and many of the problems that came with it, just many of the endemic problems. Like, you think about ChatGPT, right? You ask ChatGPT a question and it can just kind of spit out this answer that looks human. It doesn't actually have thoughts, but it can just sort of statistically analyze it and say, look, I've read everything ever written on the internet, a huge amount of text. This sounds like something humans say. I've listened to everything humans say. This sounds like something a human would say. And similarly, with this approach, it's saying, okay, output like the commands to drive the car, but output something that looks like what a human would do. It trained on all of us driving manually, how we make those right turns, those left turns manually. And it says, okay, just output something that looks like something a human would do. So many of the like problems with 11, you just look at that sequence of output commands it's giving and it does not look human, right? So you can just sort of tell this LLM, or that's not an LLM. You just sort of tell this model, just output a series of commands that look like what you've seen the humans do in the training set. And they're just able to mimic that in kind of honestly a magical way.
Yeah, I second that. It's interesting you mentioned the pedestrians on the hour the drive I just did like an hour ago. I did notice that before on version 11. I want to say the car would not even attempt to go across if there was a single person in the crosswalk. But um, with version 12, if there's somebody going the other way, like away from your car, they're in the crosswalk and they're already out of your way, the car will just slip by. It'll just go right through, just as a human would, instead of basically waiting there forever. Which sometimes in San Francisco there is never a window um, where nobody's in the crosswalk and the green light isn't on the other side. But um, also, the other thing that blew my mind, it's such a small thing, and I posted this just a little while ago. It's I just took the car home like an hour ago from where I was, and I wanted to see it pull over and stop by my house, like Omar had shown in version 12. And to my complete shock, it turned on the turn signal and it pulled into my driveway. And before, like on version 11, version 10, it would just like arrive at the destination and just stop in the middle of the road, and you basically had to take over a park or whatever. Like it's just kind of amazing. And there was one other thing that has always been a problem for me on version 10 and 11 is that there's this place nearby my house where there's a stop sign on the adjacent road that's visible from the road you're driving on, but it's not a stop sign for you. And version 10 and version 11 would always consistently try to stop at that stop sign because it saw a stop sign, it wanted to stop. But version 12, for whatever reason, I don't know how, it handled it perfectly this time. Um, and that's really special.
Thank you so much, Wasabi, and thank you, Omar, for all the insights. Super helpful. I wanted to throw out kind of more of a future-looking question. Has anybody thought about once FSD is fully ramped, fully functional, works super well as a level 4 system, have you guys or anybody else thought about what the ramp's going to look like, not for the vehicle self-driving functionality, but for all the infrastructure that'll be needed, like people at the charging stations to unplug and plug in the vehicles, clean the vehicles, like all those kind of external things that'll go into the robotaxi network?
Yeah, a lot of it is the same stuff we're already doing. We need service centers, we need superchargers, that type of stuff. So, you
Maybe
could have
bots.
someone at the supercharger to plug them in. You could have Optimus or something. But yeah, a lot of the investment overlaps with what we're already doing for the vehicle business.
Yeah, I think even before we get to that part, I think the cars are going to be perfectly capable of driving themselves without drivers for quite a while, but it's going to take a while for regulations and laws to catch up. Um, so I think what you're referring to is kind of a ways out, and yeah, we're going to be we're going to need to have service centers and stuff and people there to be able to plug in your car for you while it's out robo taxiing or whatever. So or maybe if anybody remembers, like 10 years ago, Tesla had that video of that robotic snake arm thing that would go in and plug in your car for you. Um, maybe that'll exist. Who knows? Um, I mean, there's also stuff around like, what if the car gets a flat tire or something? Is it able to call roadside assistance and somebody change the tire and have it be on its way? Like, what if it has some kind of mechanical issue and stops? Um, I mean, we see this kind of stuff with Waymo where like it'll get stuck sometimes, and sometimes it'll get stuck so badly that they have to send out like a physical person to go get in the car and move it. Um, so while I think like full self-driving is like right around the corner, there's always going to be these like super tiny, extraordinarily rare edge cases that's going to kind of block it from being like there's nobody in the car.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, ultimately, it's just exciting that we're at the point where we're thinking about those kinds of problems. And I think that those problems will probably be blocking to a certain extent for, like you're saying, a fully autonomous network. But it's pretty cool to be thinking about those kind of problems.
Yeah, primarily, I think what FSD is all about right now is safety. I mean, so many people die every single day in auto accidents, and if we can make the roads as close to 100% safe as possible, that's a wonderful thing. And if that means for an extra, 10 or 20 years, that you like somebody's going to be in the car anyway, I think most of the time because you're going to be transporting people. So if you're going to sit in the driver's seat, and if that means that like you're the one who needs to pick out a parking space, then so be it. I would consider FSD to be solved at that point. Um, basically, when there's no more deaths.
Yeah, that's a good point. As long as people are still dying, it's not completely solved. So you could really count the point of solving probably long after even driverless. But I think this is really something that is going to happen step by step. And a lot of people sort of get just blown away by the enormity of the problem and they go, oh my God, this is never going to happen. But you just got to take one step at a time. The Chinese proverb, how do you move a mountain? You start by picking up a single stone. So there's definitely huge progress being made here. I think there's no doubt that we'll have software that works perfectly nearly all the time before we have driverless. So what's the gap between it working nearly perfectly on our cars as a supervised system to actually being driverless? We could probably debate that one way or another, but ultimately it's probably going to vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Some places will probably be faster, some places will probably be slower. Um, and it'll be kind of an unpredictable sort of political process. But I would hope it happens relatively quickly. And I would imagine that there's always going to be sort of some interaction with the user. I imagine a driverless car of the future could speak to a user using natural language. It could maybe allow them to touch something on the touch screen, maybe, you know, tap where they wanted to park or point or something like that. There could be some way of interacting with the user. It just probably wouldn't be the steering wheel and pedals that we're familiar with today.
All right, Omar, anything else you want to add on V12?
No, I mean, I'm just excited that it's rolling out to everybody. So hopefully everyone will go subscribe and try it out for themselves and let us know what they think in their part of the country.
Big day for Tesla, big week for Tesla. As V12 rolls out, we'll see more and more, and we'll keep talking about it in these spaces. And I'm going to be looking forward to reading everyone's take. Anyone who has V12.2.1 who gets it in the coming days, you're welcome to request to speak and share your experience. Should we call it a day?
Yeah,
All
I think
right.
we got it.
Thank you very much, everybody. And I will talk to you all tomorrow.